Chapter 488. Dark clouds covered the chain mountains, drenching the verdant mountains. Misty clouds floated between the mountains, fluctuating with the wind and rain. Rainwater flowed down from the stone slab carved with the words, Qing Zhao's home. Behind the heavy stone door was a large empty space. White flames burned up from below, like an inverted waterfall of flames. Unlike regular flames, they were silent and soundless, nor did they feel any heat. Instead, they carried an indescribably bone-chilling coldness. 20 skulls tossed about in the flames. They opened their mouths and their teeth chattered loudly. It was like a soul-calming song from hell, or like countless monks chanting Buddhist scriptures. It was both evil and holy, bizarre and grand. The source of these flames was little Anne. Her seaweed-like long hair rippled like flames, as if the flames and the skulls came from her mind. Little Anne formed a seal with her hands and chanted a scripture. At first glance, she looked like an old monk sitting in meditation. However, the seal was not a Buddhist seal, and the scripture was not a Buddhist scripture. She suddenly pointed her finger at the sky, and the 1,000-zhong long flame disappeared. The skulls formed a circle and rotated above her head. She opened her mouth and spat out a white prayer bead. The prayer bead rotated and turned into a huge skull. It was pure white and sparkling, and it shone with a bright flame. The other 20 prayer beads shone with light as well, becoming even more powerful. Little Anne waved her hand again, and the 21 skulls turned into 21 prayer beads. They returned to her wrist and formed a string. She had finally taken another step forward with the white bone demonic artifact, the skull prayer beads, and completely stabilized the first layer of the path of white bone and great beauty. Her cultivation advanced further. The 21 prayer beads represented the 10 lands, 10 Paramitas, and Buddhahood in Buddhism. In her hands they held a completely different meaning. Those who were not well versed in Buddhism would not be able to comprehend them. From its appearance, it looked like a string of prayer beads. It glowed with Buddhist light and was open and aboveboard. It was a proper Buddhist artifact. She casually plucked one of the prayer beads. It could withstand the might of an arcane artifact. The power of any one of these skeleton demons could kill a regular Foundation establishment cultivator. And under the control of her mind, these 21 skeleton devils fought side by side, their hearts connected with each other, and their might was even more astonishing. It could be said that she alone was equivalent to an army of cultivators, enough to influence the division of power in the Clear River Prefecture. When Little Anne thought of Li Qingshan, he felt slightly uneasy. He immediately took out the bamboo jade lot of the cloud booklet, and used the cloud booklet 7 lots, to perform divination. It didn't take long for the results to come out. Her expression changed slightly. The divination showed that Li Qingshan was in danger. He was almost surrounded by killing intent and was in a desperate situation. Little Anne immediately leaped up, but heard curses coming from outside. Li Qingshan, get out, I know you're in there. Chu Tian executed the palm of 5 elements and slammed it at the door of the cave. Metal, wood, water, fire, and earth. The spiritual qi of the 5 elements grew and multiplied endlessly. First, the hand that flickered with 5-colored light was only a few feet across. It constantly drew in the spiritual qi of the world and grew to several meters in the blink of an eye, slamming against the 8 gates formation of golden locks viciously. It produced a great rumble that echoed through the mountains. The 8 gates formation of golden locks obviously could not be destroyed so easily. Stop struggling. Save some strength. I can still use you a few more times, but I'll have to eat your limbs first. Unfortunately, I'm already a little tired of you. Li Qingshan laughed loudly. The power of the tremors of the ox demon was released from every inch of his body. The spider web began to tremble violently. Helicoverpa Rose's expression changed, becoming twisted with anger. It was unknown whether it was because of Li Qingshan's words, or because of his actions, or both. In that instant, her figure disappeared from where she stood. She lunged at the center of the spider web. Her speed was not so much like the wind or lightning but more like teleportation. Her claws rapidly clawed at Li Qingshan's shoulders. If she managed to grab hold of them, it would be impossible for Li Qingshan not to leave his arms behind. Otherwise, he would be caught in a close combat that he could not possibly win against. However, Li Qingshan seemed to have been prepared. He suddenly broke free from the spider web with his right arm and threw it directly at Helicoverpa Rose's beautiful face. Li Qingshan had already begun practicing the spirit turtle's method of sea suppression, allowing his mind to reach a state of intricacy. In the moment Helicoverpa Rosa vanished, he experienced a wondrous feeling, as if he could predict her next move. It did not originate from precise analysis, but purely from a feeling. He casually threw a punch. Helicoverpa Rosa's lunge seemed like she was delivering her face to his fist. Bang! However, Li Qingshan was unable to get his fist to make intimate contact with her face as he wished. In that crucial moment, Helicoverpa Rosa used her superior reaction to grab Li Qingshan's fist. A silvery gray color spread out, rapidly covering her entire body. It made her seem like a delicate metal sculpture. The tremors of the ox demon ripped open cracks in her silver palm, but that was all. You can only play tricks like that in bed. Helicoverpa Rosa said coldly and bit towards Li Qingshan's neck. This time it was no longer a passionate kiss or intense flirtation. Instead, she wanted to directly inject poison into his body. This was different from the weak poison from the spikes on her leg. She only needed a single kiss to completely snuff out all of Li Qingshan's ability to resist. Chapter 491. In her current state, it's probably one of her innate abilities. Her defenses are ridiculously powerful. In other words, I don't have any methods that can deal a lethal blow to her right now. As long as she bites me and wraps me up in the web, only death awaits me. The constant warnings from the spirit turtle's demon core had already become meaningless. It only told Li Qingshan that he could die at any time. He obviously understood this. There was no need for anyone to remind him. Helicoverpa Rosa's venomous fangs were inches away, but her left hand remained firmly wrapped around Li Qingshan's right fist, while her right hand clamped down on his left shoulder, pressing him firmly against the web and immobilizing him. Li Qingshan could not dodge, nor could he flee. All he could do was fight to the death. Ox demon butts horns. Li Qingshan suddenly raised his head. The pair of sharp horns engraved with the words, North Moon, were in full display, pushing towards the back of Helicoverpa Rosa's throat. Helicoverpa Rosa was also reluctant to collide with the toughest part of Li Qingshan's body, so she tilted her head slightly to avoid it. Although she failed to deliver a venomous kiss as she wished, it did not stop her from continuing to push Li Qingshan to his death. The slender fingers of her right hand had already stabbed into Li Qingshan's shoulder. Crippling his arm was only a matter of time. At the same time, the 8 legs turned into 8 blurry shadows, shooting out from behind her. This time it was no longer a stab but a hug. Like 8 extended arms, they brushed past Li Qingshan, wanting to pull him firmly into their embrace. A bewitching smile that Li Qingshan was extremely familiar with appeared on her silvery gray face. It would only appear when they were in extreme pleasure. If that was the pleasure of the body, then it was the enjoyment of the mind. Now was the enjoyment of the spirit, enjoying the primitive pleasure of a predator hunting its prey. However, it seemed particularly cold and eerie right now. Once she hugs me, I probably won't be able to break free. I don't believe that my innate divine ability is only useful in bed. Tremors of the ox demon break for me. Li Qingshan once again exerted the power of vibration with all his might, and the sound of thousands of zither strings snapping came from beneath him. The tenacious spiderweb was finally torn apart. He used all his strength to pull his fist back from Helicoverpa Rosa's hand. Blood spurted out from his shoulder, and there were now 5 bloody holes in it. He directly sacrificed a part of his flesh. Finally, his body regained its freedom once more and he fell down. The wings of wind were unfurled to the extreme. It slashed upwards like a wind blade. The smile on Helicoverpa Rosa's face became even brighter. Just like her sexual preferences, she liked intense and exciting performances. The more her prey struggled, the more excited she became. He raised his arms and casually shattered the wind god's wings. However, Li Qingshan's goal had already been achieved. With a flap of his wings, he had widened the distance between them. The wind god's wings condensed again, and he desperately fluttered as he flew downwards with all his might. Fortunately, Helicoverpa Rosa's ability to fly in the air was not strong. This was also expected. After all, she was a monster that lived underground. Helicoverpa Rosa's body flipped in the air and landed lightly on the straight wall. She ran down along the wall. Every time she landed, a big hole would explode in the wall. She used the force to move forward and instantly accelerated. She turned into a silver-gray shadow, leaving the rising smoke and falling bricks far behind her. She was the queen of the underground world, so she did not need the ability to fly. In the blink of an eye, the distance was shortened again. Helicoverpa Rosa smiled at Li Qingshan, opened her lips and spat out pieces of spiderweb towards Li Qingshan. If Li Qingshan dodged, the spiderweb would expand beneath him and trap him again. However, he had already made up his mind. He took a deep breath and opened his mouth wide. Howling winds like a passing typhoon gushed out of his mouth. Although the spiderweb was extremely tough and could not be broken by brute force, its mass was also extremely light. It was blown away by the winds or opened up prematurely. Li Qingshan used the recoil to increase the distance between them once again. With a loud boom, the several hundred zhang of altitude fell to the ground in the blink of an eye. Li Qingshan stopped. There was no way Helicoverpa Rosa would let go of such a good opportunity. She suddenly stopped and bent her slender legs. Like a spring being pressed to the limit, she suddenly released all her strength and shot downwards like a silver ray of light. At this time, she no longer had any playful thoughts in her heart. To be able to escape from her hands again and again, his strength was definitely not just that of a demon general. He simply had the intention of crossing the heavenly chasm between a demon general and a demon commander. Not only did he have many innate magical powers, but the speed of his growth was even more astonishing. If she let him continue to grow, it would become more and more difficult to eat him. She must not let him escape again. Once she succeeded, she would use the spiderweb to entangle him, and then slowly deal with him. While she was thinking, she suddenly saw a crimson shadow appear on the spiral staircase at the side, leaping up and pouncing towards her. Crimson hair and crimson eyes, exactly the same as Li Qingshan. Helicoverpa Rosa was slightly startled, and then realized that this was his mirror clone. Ever since Li Qingshan entered the Spider Queen's residence, he had begun mobilizing his mirror clone to set up an ambush. He had been waiting for this moment. Although the speed of the mirror clone was much slower than that of the deity, it was lying in ambush here, and even took advantage of Helicoverpa Rosa's full-strength attack. And at the moment when the turn in the air was unfavorable, it intercepted. Although Helicoverpa Rosa could not dodge, she raised her hand and clasped the head of the mirror clone, and her 5 fingers fiercely penetrated it. With a crack, blood gushed out. Li Qingshan felt a tingling pain in his head. He and the mirror clone were originally one, not an ordinary clone, but equivalent to another body of his. There was no time to repair it with demon aura. The head of the mirror clone was crushed, and like a watermelon, blood and brain matter splashed everywhere. This feeling was extremely terrible. However, Helicoverpa Rosa was slightly hindered. In a blink of an eye, Li Qingshan had disappeared, and there was a hole on the ground that could only accommodate one person. "You want to run?" Helicoverpa Rosa snorted coldly and rushed into the hole as well. Soil and rock pressed in from all directions, and the path ahead was sealed off as well. She could not sense Li Qingshan's presence at all. Helicoverpa Rosa's eyes lit up, and 4 rings appeared in her eyes. Her gaze immediately pierced through the layers of soil and saw where Li Qingshan was. "Even if you fly into the sky or dive into the ground, you can forget about escaping from me." She circulated her demon chi and broke through the soil, directly pursuing him. At her realm of cultivation, the obstruction of soil and rock was no better than air or water. She could easily carve out a path. The heavy soil and rock parted in front of Li Qingshan before closing up behind him. After reaching the 4th layer of the ox demon, his usage of the power of tremors had become even more ingenious, and he vaguely gained the ability to control soil and rock to some extent. Strongboulder's demon core in his abdomen had shrunk slightly without him noticing. The demon core belonged to the earth element, so it would not be absorbed by the spirit turtle's demon core that was purely water. Instead, it fused with his physique, making his body even more sturdy. Who knew how deep underground he was? He was surrounded by layers of soil and rock. The tremendous, venomous demon chi rapidly approached him from behind. Finally, Li Qingshan stopped. He turned around and faced the approaching demon chi. His fighting spirit began to rise. He definitely did not want to flee. Fleeing blindly would only prevent the tiger demon's killing intent from expanding, making it even more impossible for him to break through to the fourth heavenly layer. He was choosing a suitable place to fight, as well as waiting for a suitable opportunity. Now this was the place. It was time. Come, ma'am Spider Queen. I'll show you the power of your child's father. Although the soil layer was not a serious obstacle for Lolth, it was not a serious obstacle. However, it was like swimming in water. It was not as easy as walking on the ground after all. Her speed was still affected slightly. At this moment, the smile on her face had completely vanished, and it was filled with ferocious and terrifying killing intent. Even though she enjoyed the process of chasing her prey, if she allowed her prey to escape too far away, then the hunter would seem too incompetent. Suddenly, she saw Li Qingshan stop. Have you finally given up on the pointless struggle? Helicoverpa Rosa's voice passed through the thick soil and reached Li Qingshan's ears. Li Qingshan instead walked over to where she was. His expression was calm and composed as he said, "The ox demon's great strength sinks in the mud. As long as I still have a shred of strength left, I will continue struggling forever, even if I'm in dire straits, even if I don't have the slightest chance of victory." He smiled and changed the topic, not to mention that I already have a 30% chance of victory now. What? 30%? Did I hear you wrong? Do you think that being in the soil means that you have the geographical advantage? The Spider Queen sneered. Her hand, which shone with a silvery gray luster, pierced the earth easily. Her 5 fingers closed together and stabbed towards Li Qingshan's heart like a sharp knife. Li Qingshan's reaction was nothing out of the ordinary. It was still a simple punch. However, this time he did not use the tremors of the ox demon. He even deliberately reduced the consumption of demonic aura. He only relied on the strength of his physical body. Furthermore, his fist did not break through the soil like what Helicoverpa Rosa had done. Instead, the soil and rocks piled up on his fist like a thick and huge gauntlet. The speed and strength of this punch did not weaken or diminish in the slightest. Therefore, Helicoverpa Rosa only saw a huge boulder made of soil and rocks rushing towards her. But she did not care about it at all. Her hand easily cut through Li Qingshan's gauntlet. Chapter 492. Li Qingshan could clearly sense the changes in the earth around him. Although he could not see or hear it, Helicoverpa Rosa's subsequent attacks were no longer untraceable. It was like a fish swimming in water. No matter how agile it was, it would always cause ripples in the water. However, Li Qingshan did not rely on the water to determine her location. Instead, he directly fused with the earth. When she opened up the earth, he grasped the trajectory of her movements through the changes in the earth, so his reactions were naturally slightly faster. His strength seems to have increased. My strength is already considered relatively strong among demon commanders. This means that he has indeed reached the level of a demon commander in a certain aspect. Is it just because of his descendants' bloodline? Helicoverpa Rosa tried to pull her hand back, but she failed. She was slightly surprised. After reaching the 4th layer of the ox demon, one of the 2 innate abilities of the ox demon, the strength of the earth, Li Qingshan's strength of the earth, had silently undergone a change. If the thick earth had only been a powerful support for him in the past, then now it was as if he had become one with it. There was an unending stream of energy constantly pouring into his body. It was as if he could fight forever without feeling tired. Humph, you want to fight me in close combat? You're digging your own grave. Helicoverpa Rosa took advantage of the situation and charged forward. At that moment, Li Qingshan's eyes became clear. Helicoverpa Rosa's figure was clearly reflected in his boundless mind. Her slender figure swept across the silver-gray fan, chopping towards his waist like a battle axe. He could even estimate the power of this attack. His kidneys would definitely be heavily damaged. At this moment, Helicoverpa Rosa had only just raised her leg. Li Qingshan was slightly delighted. The spirit turtle had the ability to divine fortune and predict danger. However, ever since Li Qingshan reached the 4th layer of the spirit turtle, none of the opponents he encountered had forced him into such a state, so this ability had never been activated. Until today's battle, this feeling. Only in the constant life-threatening danger did it become clearer and clearer. Sure enough, people were forced. Demons were also forced out. To put it nicely, the spirit turtle was naturally a divine beast that sought fortune and avoided calamity. To put it bluntly, he was a cowardly tortoise that was greedy for life and afraid of death. He avoided danger at the sight of it, and he didn't get involved in the slightest bit of karma or take any risks. I've become so conservative these past few years. I'm sure it's because of it. As expected, my current life is what I want, to fight against the strongest enemy. The most beautiful woman in the world. Yes, a banshee. Boom! Helicoverpa Rosa's ankle had also fallen into Li Qingshan's hands. Bull demon butts horns. Li Qingshan let out a roar that sounded like a bull or a tiger. He exerted force with both hands and pulled Helicoverpa Rosa's body over. He lowered his head and pushed forward. Boom! Helicoverpa Rosa twisted her body and stomped hard on Li Qingshan's head with her free leg. She borrowed the force to free her limbs and flew out. A huge shockwave blasted the soil around the two of them away. It was squeezed into a small cave. Li Qingshan felt dizzy. Although the skull was the toughest part of his body, the kick still made him feel like his head was splitting apart. He shook his head forcefully and laughed madly. Once I defeat you, I'll fuck you again. Nonsense. Helicoverpa Rosa rebuked angrily, but she was surprised. What was going on? She clearly had the upper hand now. Just now she even stepped on his foot. Why was his attitude becoming more and more arrogant? It didn't feel like he had a 30% chance of winning, but it seemed like he had already won. Could it be that he had some powerful trump card? An old brother told me that if I don't even dare to say a few arrogant words, I might as well go back to farming. Li Qingshan did not possess any powerful trump cards. He only felt extremely delighted. He was fighting against the terrifying Spider Queen underground, where the sun never shone. If he lost, only death would await him, but if he won, he would receive quite a nice reward. Even if he lived a peaceful and happy life in the mountain village, it couldn't be compared to this glorious moment. He had long put life and death out of his mind. Now he was just enjoying it, deliberately mystifying. Helicoverpa Rosa smiled coldly. Her silver-gray body disappeared in an instant and appeared in front of Li Qingshan. She raised her hands high and 8 shadows screamed. Hands, feet, knees, elbows, every part of her body could be used as a deadly weapon. Like a storm, they fell on Li Qingshan's body. His head, chest, abdomen, and legs were attacked almost at the same time. Li Qingshan lost the sense of the earth and rocks. Although he could predict Helicoverpa Rosa's next move, his reaction couldn't keep up with the speed of Helicoverpa Rosa's next move. Boom! 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 The muffled sounds of thunder constantly bombarded Li Qingshan's body. Chi flowed everywhere. Just when the cavern showed signs of collapsing, it was immediately compressed even more firmly. Her 8 legs danced around chaotically, leaving behind wounds on Li Qingshan's tough skin. In the blink of an eye, the toxins would corrode into horrifying wounds so deep that bones could be seen. A silver-gray shadow circled around Li Qingshan, tearing apart and devouring his flesh piece by piece. All Li Qingshan could do was protect his vitals, albeit barely. However, his maniacal laughter never stopped. Ignoring his wounded body, he used the spirit turtle's predictions to attack every chance he had to, bombarding Helicoverpa Rosa's body. It was as if he wanted to trade injury for injury. Helicoverpa Rosa took a few punches, but her reaction was very normal. This was because not only were there no abilities on his fists, there was not even much demon chi. He was only relying on brute force. After another clash, Helicoverpa Rosa pulled back. What, are you tired? Keep going. Li Qingshan asked. There was no longer a complete piece of flesh on his body, and his bones were covered in cracks. There was not a single inch of his face that could be associated with handsomeness. The left side of his face had completely caved in, the result of a side kick. As for the right side of his face, it was even more terrifying. Under the corrosion of the toxins, his gums and teeth were exposed. His throat gurgled as if he was laughing, but he was no longer able to use his facial muscles to express this emotion. Only his eyes remained bright as he stared at Helicoverpa Rosa. He was right. Helicoverpa Rosa did indeed feel a hint of exhaustion. Even with the toughness of a demon commander's body, It was impossible for her to maintain such an intense attack. Looking at Li Qingshan, she was surprised and doubtful. Doesn't he get tired? However, that was not what surprised her the most. His reaction speed seemed to be gradually increasing, and he was extremely sensitive to fatal attacks. He would often be able to dodge in the most effective manner at the most crucial moment, avoiding fatal wounds. Of course, the price for this would often be a horrific wound. If it were not for the spirit turtle's demon core that could replace most of his organs, he would have collapsed already. Why should I waste my strength on a corpse? Helicoverpa Rosa sneered. The toxins had already invaded every part of his body. Although the toxins from the spikes were not as potent as a direct bite, the effects accumulated bit by bit were still rather terrifying. Right now, all she needed to do was wait for the toxins to erupt and completely destroy Li Qingshan's body. Then you'll probably be disappointed. What? At this moment, the indigestible strong stone's demon core in Li Qingshan's stomach suddenly erupted with rings of grayish-yellow light. The strength of the earth was an ability to communicate with the boundless will of the earth, while the earth-attributed demon core was a condensation of the essence of the earth. Normally, he would not agree when he digested it. But at this moment, when his body was on the brink of collapse, the earth all around him extended a helping hand to him, wanting to save this child of the earth that was about to die. The strong stone's demon core was stirred up too. It spun around and released demon chi that merged with his body. His wounds healed at a visible rate. Black, poisonous blood flowed from his wounds. The remaining toxins were no longer a problem, as his body had become even more powerful after digesting the strong stone's demon core. Helicoverpa Rosa was also stunned. She did not know where the strong stone's demon core was, and thought that Li Qingshan was hiding a healing ability in his eyes. What, have you rested enough? Or did you use up all your strength in bed and have no more strength to fight? Then obediently lie down. Li Qingshan twisted his head, and with two cracking sounds, some of the dislocated bones in his neck were restored. He grinned maliciously, and his eyes gradually turned from crimson to blood red. At the same time that he swallowed the strong stone's demon core, the killing intent contained in the demon core erupted all at once. In his sea of consciousness, the tiger demon roared and leapt, growing larger and larger until it filled the entire sea of consciousness. It bared its fangs and brandished its claws, breaking out as if it had broken free from a cage. Beast marks appeared on Li Qingshan's cheeks. His long fangs extended, his hands turned into tiger claws, and a tiger tail trailed behind him, swinging like a steel whip. He had transformed into a fierce tiger in human form. Miraculously, at this moment, his mind became abnormally clear. It was as if his soul had left his shell and was looking down at him from above. Li Qingshan arched his back and lowered his body. His killing intent and killing intent were completely withdrawn, as if he was a ferocious tiger ready to pounce on its prey. There were no cries of birds or insects. The entire forest was silent. This is the best time for me to break through to the fourth layer of the tiger demon. If I fail, I won't have a second demon core to heal myself. His train of thought was interrupted, and violent killing intent dominated everything. Roar! A tiger's roar was accompanied by a violent surge of killing intent. Helicoverpa Rosa couldn't help but take a step back. Then she felt a deep sense of humiliation. Could a mere demon general scare me? Even if you recover 100 times, I can still defeat you 101 times. The only way was to keep fighting again and again, to defeat fear, pain, setbacks, and challenges. Even if it was to forget everything and sink into madness, it could not stop. I thought that the fourth layer of the tiger demon would be the same as the first three layers, where killing intent and potential would be stimulated under the external pressure of life and death. So that's not the case. This is the true meaning behind the endless battle of the tiger demon. In the moment Li Qingshan comprehended this, a violent aura of malice rushed out of his body. It was so arrogant and violent, as if he wanted to fight against the world. Helicoverpa Rosa was slightly surprised and took a step back, but she did not feel ashamed. She could clearly sense that Li Qingshan had broken through again. He was like a demonic blade that had been unsealed, which actually made her feel danger. However, she stopped worrying again and smiled mockingly. He was heavily injured and did not have a single strand of demon chi on him. No matter how he broke through, how could he escape from her? As if in response to her thoughts, demon chi surged into Li Qingshan's body from somewhere. The spirit turtle's demon core suddenly lit up. All the oppression and humiliation was about to be paid back. In your dreams, Helicoverpa Rosa bellowed. The web tightened, and with a crack, the spirit turtle's profound shell became riddled with cracks. Actually, I discovered your scheme a long time ago. How can you hide everything that happens underground from me? Li Qingshan smiled. Wouldn't you run if you discovered it? Helicoverpa Rosa did not believe him, but she could not help but feel a hint of doubt. I was afraid you'd run. Li Qingshan smiled. Actually, this web still has a flaw. Where? The spirit turtle's profound shell shattered loudly. Li Qingshan raised his hand and pointed. It's you. Helicoverpa Rosa could only vaguely see two whirlwinds surge out from Li Qingshan's back. His figure vanished from where he was in that instant. She was alarmed, but by the time she returned to her senses, it was already too late. Li Qingshan slammed into her with the web. Maintaining this web will require demon chi and physical strength, right? Your demon chi and physical strength should be pretty much depleted now, right? Li Qingshan pressed her down and wrapped his claws around her slender neck. He smiled viciously. I'm very vengeful, mother of my child. Chapter 495. Helicoverpa Rosa no longer had the slightest smile on her face. Shock, fury, and a sliver of uncontrollable fear welled up within her. This feeling had never stopped since the day she had gained spirituality, all the way until the day she became a demon commander. It had been so many years since anyone or anything could make her feel fear. Am I defeated? No, how can I be defeated? Helicoverpa Rosa struggled with all her might. Her hands locked onto his arms, she raised her leg and kicked his back. Li Qingshan grinned viciously. Like a mountain, he pressed down on Helicoverpa Rosa's snow-white body. No matter how she struggled, she could not budge. His arms were riddled with bloody marks from her claws, and his back was aching from the kicks. However, her attacks were no longer as fierce as they had been at the beginning. They seemed rather weak and powerless. After fighting for so long, Helicoverpa Rosa's demon chi was almost completely exhausted. Her entire body was filled with exhaustion, and her strength was no longer as great as before. Meanwhile, Li Qingshan's body had become even stronger after breaking through to the fourth layer of the tiger demon. Furthermore, he constantly replenished his demon chi with the power of wish. Under the effect of the divine earthen strength, he did not feel tired at all. In particular, after devouring and digesting Strong Stone's demon core, his strength had further increased. Under such circumstances, she was no longer able to gain the upper hand in close combat. Helicoverpa Rosa circulated her remaining demon chi. The spider web tightened, binding Li Qingshan and strangling him. 8 spikes shot towards him. Without a word, Li Qingshan punched her abdomen. His ox demon's great strength, the power of tremors, and even a bit of the power of wish were added to his punch. In an instant, Helicoverpa Rosa's body was dyed with a layer of silvery gray. The power of tremors was unleashed in waves. Cracks appeared on his silver-gray skin, and before he could recover, the second punch landed. Boom, 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 boom. Li Qingshan completely ignored the tightening spider webs and the spikes coming at him. He just punched her again and again, viciously venting the anger in his heart. The spider web gradually loosened, and the spikes became weaker and weaker. In the end, they could not even cut through his ox demon forge's its hide. On the back of Helicoverpa Rosa's metallic skin, ripples spread out, and the texture of his skin was restored. The silvery gray color gradually faded. It returned to its snow-white color. Li Qingshan's fists had used up the last bit of her demonic aura, and she could no longer maintain her innate talent. Li Qingshan casually pulled away the cobwebs wrapped around his body. Without demonic chi to control and force to pull, no matter how indestructible the spider web was, it was just a lifeless object. Then he patted Helicoverpa Rosa's cheek and said, "How is it, Madam Spider Queen, didn't I serve you well? Do you like this kind of service? I'll kill you." Helicoverpa Rosa's expression contorted. and she sank into hysterical rage. She opened her red lips and was about to spit out a spider web. It pierced through Li Qingshan's head. Pa! A resounding slap landed on Helicoverpa-Rose's face. Her head turned away, then suddenly turned back, and another slap landed. Every time she turned her head, every time she tried to spit out a spider web, she would receive a slap. After a dozen or so consecutive slaps, she finally gave up on this self-humiliating behavior. She tilted her head and stared at Li Qingshan with one eye. This scene was exactly the same as just now. It was the same as before, but her eyes were filled with resentment. Boom! Another punch landed on her abdomen. Li Qingshan did not do it to take revenge for her venomous gaze, but because he sensed that demonic aura was beginning to gather in her body. He grabbed the hair behind Helicoverpa-Rosa and tugged viciously. Long before she launched her attack, the spirit turtle's demon core had already given her a clear warning. Before she could even inject the venom, Li Qingshan had completely nullified her scheme. All that was left were two faint red dots. North Moon, I'll definitely kill you. I'll skin you alive. I'll eat your flesh. Ha ha ha. I can understand your perverted mind a little now. Hearing an enemy you can't fight back say something like that, it sure is fucking ridiculous. Let's change to a better posture. Li Qingshan stood up. He pressed the back of Helicoverpa-Rose's head against the ground and forcefully flipped her around. He looked at her, and her eyes lit up slightly. Unlike her original ferocious form, her human form was extremely beautiful. However, even though they had intercourse countless times, her human form was still extremely beautiful. However, even though she had done it countless times, she had never had the opportunity to admire it from this angle. It was probably because she followed the principle of not showing her back to the enemy. Her round bottom was particularly plump. As she struggled, it rose high, swaying with a ball of white light. Her waist suddenly tightened. It was slender enough to be grasped, even a little exaggerated. The lines of her back were extremely beautiful. Her breasts seemed particularly plump too. Apart from the words devilish figure, there was basically no other suitable description. Li Qingshan grinned. This prize. I like it. Few dare. I'll blow up my demon core. Helicoverpa-Rosa turned her head around desperately and threatened sternly. Enough. You won't blow up your demon core unless your life is threatened. Don't talk like a human. Even if I really do blow myself up, I'll say it. I won't change it. Li Qingshan laughed madly. Suddenly, he bent down and whispered softly into her ear, "Darling, I'm coming." Cobweb City was silent. The night roamers returned carefully like they were treading on thin ice. After confirming there were no auras or sounds, they eased up slightly, but they were still afraid to enter the city. In an empty region of magma and flowing water below Cobweb City, the 6 clans gathered together, discussing softly. Sir North Moon really entered Spider Queen's residence? Not only did he enter, but looks like he's done for. Looks like we're going to be directly commanded by Spider Queen again. North Moon, I think he's lost his head from his arrogance. Does he really think he can escape from a demon commander with his life as a mere demon general? He's already become Spider Queen's delicacy now. Master definitely won't die. Do you stupid women really think you're worthy of guessing Master's strength? The night roamers all whispered among themselves, as if they were afraid of breaking the silence of the city. However, the voice was high-spirited and filled with unparalleled confidence. It was like a bolt of lightning that ripped through the dark clouds. Yi Mingzhu leapt up and glanced past every single night roamer sharply. All of the night roamers shut their mouths and gathered their gazes on Yi Liuobua. Their gazes were filled with hostility. Yi Liuobua, you traitor who takes advantage of others to intimidate others. You've helped North Moon oppress us. We haven't even gotten even with you yet you've actually leapt out now. Are you prepared to atone for your crimes with death? A matriarch said sinisterly. The night roamers all remained silent with sunken faces. For a moment, who knew how many daggers and swords had been drawn? Black figures flickered, ready to merge into the darkness at any time and carry out a fatal assassination. The reason why night roamers were willing to listen to Li Qingshan's orders was not just because they were powerful enough themselves, but because of Helicoverpa-Rose's orders. The nature of night roamers made it impossible for them to truly submit to anyone. Betrayal and slaughter were as simple as breathing. Even Yiliosu had her own pursuits and plans. Only Yiliobwa was absolutely loyal. During Li Qingshan's 3 years of secluded cultivation, the greatest contributor to why the night roamers could offer up so many spiritual herbs was actually not Yiliosu, but Yiliobwa. She had used Li Qingshan's name many times to force the 6 clans to gather spiritual herbs, and the special favor she received was also the root of jealousy and hatred. Now only death awaited Li Qingshan. Even if he managed to survive, all he could do was flee. He would never be bold enough to return underground again, much less continue to command them. Many conflicts erupted all at once. Yiliobwa became everyone's target. Who knew how many powerful night roamers who had undergone the heavenly tribulation present? If they wanted to claim Yiliobwa's life, they only needed a split second. P.S. Please call me the shameless dream teller. I'm a soft-hearted and thin-skinned person. I'm only afraid of others being nice to me. Looking at the monthly votes, I'll feel bad if I don't keep updating them. Sure enough, the new year brings a new atmosphere. In the first month of the year, are we going to maintain a ranking in the 20s until the end of the month, for the first time in history? Alright, I have no objections. If you're bold enough to not vote, then I'm bold enough to write a single chapter. As for why I'm not bold enough to erupt, all I can say is, spare me, great hero. I don't want to stop updating every time I erupt either. Yep, that's fine. Chapter 496. Beneath Cobweb City, after passing through layers of earth and stone, there was a cavern. The cavern did not seem to have been formed naturally. There were no stalactites, only shattered boulders scattered all over the ground. Amidst the rubble was an azure sphere formed from countless hexagons. The sphere was translucent, but it was so hazy that it was impossible to see what was inside. As if a layer of mist had condensed within it. There was a loud thud as a hand struck the sphere. It was the hand of a woman, her fingers long and slender, her palms small and beautiful. But the force it exerted was not weak at all. There was a crisp crack like the sound of ice cracking, and a crack appeared on the azure sphere. It was easy to imagine that a few more strikes would probably shatter it. The mist dispersed a little, and the woman's face could be vaguely seen. Any man standing here would likely be dumbfounded and gasp in admiration at her appearance. It was a seductive and mature face, possessing an even more bewitching charm than a pure beauty. Even though her face was filled with shame and anger, that lofty arrogance was still clearly discernible. It seemed to have already fused into her temperament, making her seem like a queen. If not for her noble status and great authority, it would have been impossible for her to develop such a temperament. But it also aroused a man's desire to conquer. Her jet-black hair was scattered and messy, but one could still imagine the nobility of her hair. Her thin red lips were frozen in a cruel curve. She was used to issuing orders, but now she was opening and closing her mouth. She spat out a white mist, as if she were cursing and moaning. However, it was blocked by the sphere, and not a single sound could be heard. He tried to look into the sphere again, but it became even more blurry. All he saw was a snow-white human figure. It seemed to be completely naked, and it was indistinctly visible. She seemed to be kneeling on the ground in an extremely indecent manner, her body swaying uncontrollably. The 2 snow-white masses in front of her were trembling violently, and the 2 bright red dots below were like 2 red cherries on the snow, swaying back and forth. One could not help but have all sorts of enchanting thoughts. Thud! There was another loud thud as she exerted all her strength. She clenched her teeth and struck out a second time. The cracks became even larger and denser. It would depend on the situation. With just one more palm strike, he would be able to shatter the sphere and escape from it. Suddenly, 2 arms reached out from behind her, grabbed her slender waist and dragged her backwards. She flailed her arms in vain. He struggled, but he was no match for that power. In the blink of an eye, the cracks on the sphere disappeared. Inside the cave, dead silence reigned once more. After an unknown period of time, the azure sphere suddenly disappeared. First, a large amount of white mist spread out, and vaguely, a figure could be seen standing upright, with a head full of fiery red hair. As the mist dispersed, Li Qingshan stretched his body and took a deep breath of the refreshing spiritual qi of heaven and earth. His thoughts were extremely clear and his heart was incomparably satisfied. If it wasn't for the lack of spiritual energy in the world, he might have broken through the 17 or 18 levels and gone straight to the 9 heavens. However, just now that feeling was as if he had roamed one round beyond the 9 heavens, and his gaze fell back to the ground. If you want to eat me, I'll let you eat to your heart's content. Helicoverpa Rosa lay on the ground with her eyes firmly shut as if she had lost consciousness. Her snow-white body was drenched in sweat, filled with the marks of lovemaking. Although she struggled very violently in the beginning, Li Qingshan had served her plenty of what she loved the most. Towards the end, she no longer had the strength to resist, allowing him to do whatever he wanted. She was even extremely cooperative, no longer trying to bite him with her venomous fangs when they hugged each other. Obviously, there was no need for her to maintain a safe position the entire time. Of course, Li Qingshan had to admit that was what he loved the most. However, he was unable to tell whether she had lost herself in it, or whether she had the mindset of since I can't resist, I'll just enjoy it. Or perhaps it was a combination of both. Oi, mother of the child, stop playing dead. If you keep playing dead, I'll really kill you. Li Qingshan crouched down and patted the cheek behind Helicoverpa Rosa. He obviously would not be fooled by this facade, as in the moment the spirit turtle's profound shell was activated, the surging spiritual chi of the world immediately began to gather towards her. Originally he was just joking, but as soon as he said it he could not help but think, should I kill her? Right now, Helicoverpa Rosa was at her weakest. If he wanted to kill her, now was the perfect time. Once she recovered completely, it would be hard to say who would be the one killing who. With Li Qingshan's current strength, he had basically taken a step into the realm of demon commanders. He could basically sweep through the first heavenly tribulation. Right now, even if all the Foundation establishment cultivators and demon generals of the Clear River Prefecture stood before him, he could deal with them with composure. Even if he encountered demon commanders and golden core cultivators who had undergone the second heavenly tribulation, protecting himself would not be a problem anymore. However, it was basically impossible for him to emerge victorious. Li Qingshan's victory this time was due to some luck. Helicoverpa Rosa had been too careless. Her vicious nature could be described as the main reason for her defeat. If it were not for the fact that she wanted to capture Li Qingshan alive and torture him for fun before eating him raw, she would never have ended up like this. And there was an even deeper reason. After becoming a demon commander, it had already been many years since she had engaged in a battle to the death with someone. Even if he was a natural hunter, if he didn't have a worthy opponent, his combat ability would degenerate, and he wouldn't be able to display his full strength. However, ever since Li Qingshan had used his blade to kill someone for the first time, he had never stopped fighting. In terms of true strength, Li Qingshan was nowhere close to Helicoverpa Rosa. As a carapace, she was not a weakling among demon commanders either. Li Qingshan checked the divine talisman of great creation. He had directly used up 30% of the power of belief he had accumulated over all these years, all to replenish his demon chi. He possessed the extraordinary ability, the spirit turtle's method of chi suppression, so the quality of his demon chi did not pale in comparison to demon commanders. After all, it had only been a few years since he underwent the heavenly tribulation. Although he had eaten many spiritual medicines, his accumulation was still extremely weak. If he fought her another 2 times or even one more time, he would not be able to endure it. If he did not have the divine talisman of great creation to replenish his demon chi, what were his chances of victory? Even if he could barely defeat her, it would be very difficult for him to subdue her like this again. Helicoverpa Rosa would never be stupid enough to deplete her demon chi again. If a demon commander wanted to flee, how could he stop her as a mere general? What came next would be endless revenge. He would never dream of getting along with Helicoverpa Rosa peacefully after this, unless her hidden interests were stimulated and she basked in the joy of being conquered. It's not like this was some fucking pornographic novel. As the saying went, opportunities only came once. If you dare to kill me, I'll blow up my demon core and drag you down with me. Helicoverpa Rosa snapped open her eyes and stared at Li Qingshan. To his surprise, there was no longer any hatred or resentment in her eyes. There was only suffocating coldness and tranquility. Her voice was feeble and slightly hoarse. Li Qingshan instead dared not ignore her threat. He was extremely surprised. He felt that she had become rather different from the Helicoverpa Rosa in his memories. Actually, Helicoverpa Rosa was not playing dead. She naively believed she could fool Li Qingshan like that. Instead, she was savoring the lingering charm of their lovemaking and tidying through her thoughts. This matter was naturally a great humiliation to her. However, what made her feel humiliated was not the matter itself. She had no concept of such things. It had nothing to do with love. Reproduction was just the most normal thing in the natural world. What she felt humiliated was that she had been conquered by the weak. If Li Qingshan was a demon king, she would not have resisted at all. This was because in the natural world, the strong naturally had the right to choose their partners. The problem was that Li Qingshan was only a demon general and her subordinate. In a situation where his strength was completely inferior to hers, he had offended her and bullied her as the weak. Her heart was naturally filled with indignation and anger. Li Qingshan would never have imagined that his guess would actually be correct. Although it was a humiliation, Helicoverpa Rosa had truly experienced an unprecedented pleasure. This extreme pleasure mixed with pain and helplessness caused a part of her heart that had been numbed by a comfortable life to recover. She seemed to have returned to the past when she was still a spider. Hunger and threats were everywhere. Torture and slaughter were necessary every day. Otherwise, she would be tortured to death by the cruel nature. The heavy darkness was no longer filled with emptiness and boredom. She had once again found the meaning of cultivation. If Li Qingshan knew how important his actions were to her, he would definitely be filled with pride. Perhaps he really would place his hopes on conquering this proud spider queen. Unfortunately, while he had guessed the beginning incorrectly, he had not guessed the ending incorrectly. Helicoverpa Rosa was now prepared to begin a hunt. This was not for revenge, but to carry out the instincts that nature had bestowed upon her to the end. How could I bear to do that? You're the mother of my child. Li Qingshan grinned as if he was showing weakness, afraid that she would really do this. To a demon that fought for survival from birth, the will to live was deeply ingrained in their instincts. So when he could do as he pleased just now, no matter how loud her threats were, he did not care. But once his life was in danger, he would definitely not underestimate her resolve. A demon commander's self-detonation of a demon core was no joke. This was also because Li Qingshan was not strong enough. If he was also a demon commander, he would be much more confident in protecting himself. Helicoverpa Rosa would not be able to threaten him like this, so using survival to force her to submit was not impossible. However, in Li Qingshan's heart, killing intent instead intensified. His hand slid down from her face and gripped her beautiful swan-like neck. I feel like she's going to become quite troublesome. It's probably impossible to kill her before she self-detonates her demon core. But if I use that 70% of the power of wish with my tough body, it's not impossible for me to survive. As if a thick layer of dust had been wiped away, Helicoverpa Rosa's sense of danger became extremely acute. Her body immediately tensed up, and the demon core in her body was on the verge of exploding. This was a cold confrontation that could be seen every day in the natural world. When a lion hunted a wild bull, it also had to worry about being killed by the bull's horns. Should I pretend to submit first? No, once I show weakness, it will instead strengthen his resolve. In the natural world, there was a lot of false bravado, but there was no such thing as false submission. The weak would definitely be destroyed. To be continued. Proportion. The voice was as young as a baby's first cry after leaving his mother's womb, and as old as the last words of an old man who had experienced the vicissitudes of life. Li Qingshan's whole body trembled. Could this be? This place is at least hundreds of miles away from the underground. But he immediately calmed down and asked, "Who are you?" "That's not important. What's important is, who are you?" Li Qingshan was stunned for a moment and didn't know how to answer. The voice continued, "Forget it, that's not important." "Then what's important? Where are you going? Don't tell me you still want to ask me where I come from." Li Qingshan smiled. The moment he opened his mouth, he asked the three ultimate questions of life. Could this guy be a security guard buried deep underground? The voice was silent. It was unknown whether Li Qingshan was right or not. Li Qingshan laughed and said, "My name is North Moon. I come from where I come and go to where I come." This sentence is profound. Are you a human or a demon? In fact, what Li Qingshan wanted to figure out the most was not this, but whether he was a friend or a foe. Helicoverpa Rosa obviously knew him. Logically speaking, they should be on the same side. But Helicoverpa Rosa did not ask him for help even at the moment of life and death. And he could clearly sense everything that was happening here. But he just stood by and did nothing. Are you really North Moon? Are you a human or a demon? Li Qingshan was still smiling, but the smile in his eyes had faded. Could it be that he saw something? His identity as a half-human and half-demon could be said to be his biggest secret. Once it was exposed, the consequences would be unimaginable. If it was an ordinary guy, Li Qingshan would have the heart to silence him. However, the baby underground was obviously not someone he could silence. Maybe he's not sure, that's why he asked. Maybe he's just testing me. I can't panic. Forget it, that's not important. Li Qingshan was thinking about how to answer when the voice interrupted him again, making him very unhappy. Then what's important? As soon as the words left Li Qingshan's mouth, he felt that it was somewhat familiar. As expected, the voice immediately replied, "Didn't I tell you? Where are you going?" "Where I'm going is none of your business." "It's none of my business because we're going to the same place." "Then tell me where I'm going." "Up in the sky." "How do you know?" Li Qingshan was shocked. "From the first time I saw you, I knew that your ambition was not small. A frog at the bottom of a well. Didn't you cultivate all your life just to climb the edge of the well and see the world outside?" The voice was calm and gentle without much intonation. Suddenly, it became impassioned and had an unparalleled heroic spirit. He humbly called himself a frog at the bottom of a well, but Li Qingshan immediately knew that he was not an ordinary person. Looking at the 9 provinces as a well, being embarrassed and unable to relax, was there anything more heroic than this? There was another layer of meaning that Li Qingshan did not understand. Although the frog was lowly in this well, it could also be called a king. There were no natural enemies. "You're right, we're going the same way. I also want to go above the 9 heavens." Li Qingshan felt a bit more respect. His tone became much more polite, but he still only recognized each other as fellow cultivators. There was no difference in status and he would not bow and scrape. This was the pride that oxen gave him. He would not lower his head to anyone. Li Qingshan roughly understood the meaning of the voice. The so-called heaven was the goal of all cultivators, to break through the shackles of this world and go to a higher and further world. It was not that he knew about the agreement between him and oxen. "I was wrong." The voice fluctuated again, full of surprise. "What was wrong? Did I say something wrong?" Li Qingshan was confused. "I still underestimated you. Above the 9 heavens, sigh this goal. Even for me it's too far out of reach. I won't even think about it." "Aren't we talking about the same place? Above the 9 heavens, is it very far?" Although Li Qingshan had mentioned these 4 words many times, he actually did not have a specific concept. He was only at the first stage of the heavens tribulation. It was still too early to think about this. It was more important to cultivate down to earth. But when he met someone who knew the path, he could not help but ask where the destination of this dream was. "Far. I just want to climb out of the well, but you want to fly to the sky. Is it really that difficult?" Li Qingshan was dumbfounded. This comparison was too exaggerated. How deep could the well be? And how far was the earth from the sky? No. This description is a bit too simple. If it's just flying to the sky, I also have some hope. As long as I continue, it's not impossible for a frog to turn into a bird. But you want to turn into a star. What a great ambition. In the entire 9 continents out of billions of creatures, I'm afraid you are the only one who has such a dream. The voice was full of curiosity, as if it was wondering why Li Qingshan would have such an unrealistic idea. "I will wait for you above the 9 heavens, waiting for the day when we can stand side by side." Oxen's words before he left echoed in Li Qingshan's mind. It was not until now that he realized what it meant. Li Qingshan was silent. He had naively thought that he was only carrying a mountain. "What are you scared?" I was overthinking. It seems like you just added the word 9 heavens. Too much bullshit. Let me ask you again. You want to go to the sky too, right? The voice seemed to be relieved, but also a little disappointed. Did Brother Nyo add 2 more words? The answer was obvious. No. Li Qingshan's answer was also the same. No, I want to go above the 9 heavens. He raised his head and laughed arrogantly, his face beaming brightly. On a certain day, a frog was jumping at the bottom of a well, exercising its legs and feet, looking forward to the moment it jumped out of the well. At this time, a little tadpole came over and said, "Frog, frog, I want to turn into a star." The frog patiently told the little tadpole, "The stars are very far away. Moreover, tadpoles can't turn into stars. I think you are very confident in turning into a frog." The little tadpole thought for a while. "Okay, then I will first turn into a frog, and then a star." The frog was speechless. Li Qingshan's majestic posture suddenly became weary. He scratched his head in distress. But what kind of place is above the 9 heavens? Hey, you look like you know a lot about it. Tell me about it, we can probably travel together. I don't know what kind of place it is. I only heard that it is the center of the boundless universe, the home of gods and Buddhas. It seems like asking you is a waste of time. But as long as I go up step by step, I probably won't get lost. It was not until a long time later that Li Qingshan understood that the word 9 in the 9 heavens was not a quantifier, but an adjective. 9, the extreme of numbers, had infinite meaning. If you really want to go, I can give you a hand, but you have to do me a small favor first. The Legend of the Great Sage 13 _ The Legend of the Great Sage Free Reading _ Chapter 13. Place of Dreams updated. Chapter 498. What small favor? Li Qingshan could basically tell that the infant did not hold much hostility towards him. This so-called small favor was probably the main reason why he had suddenly appeared. Do you know about the Chan Monastery of Devanaga? Who in the Green Province doesn't know? The Chan Monastery of Devanaga has a cultivation method called the Chant of Devanaga. Yeah, that's the supreme cultivation method of their sect. And then? There's no then. You just have to find the Chant of Devanaga for me. This is the small favor you were talking about. You want me, a demon general, to go to the Chan Monastery of Devanaga to steal their supreme cultivation method? Li Qingshan smiled. If I had that ability, would I still be wasting my breath on you? I'd do Helicoverpa Rosa 100 times right now. This is much easier than going beyond the 9 heavens. You don't have to turn me down in such a hurry. Why don't you listen to what I can help you with? What? The phoenix's feather. Li Qingshan was alarmed. He had obtained the phoenix's scripture of Nerva a long time ago, but his cultivation had never been smooth. If he could obtain the phoenix's feather, perhaps it would be an opportunity. It might even be able to increase the power of the phoenix transformation. How do I know whether you're telling the truth or not? You can verify it with me after you obtain the Chant of Devanaga. The voice receded like the tide, becoming distant. You're only using a feather to exchange for the supreme cultivation method of the Chan Monastery of Devanaga. Aren't you a little too stingy? Since you want it so much, why don't you take it yourself? I have my troubles. The voice became more and more distant. Why don't you give me the phoenix's feather first? It'll increase my cultivation a little, and I'll have a little more confidence too. I await your assistance, fellow traveler. The voice reverberated through the air before gradually vanishing. Helicoverpa Rosa was talking to Li Qingshan afterwards. Seeing him suddenly become stunned, she pulled away from Li Qingshan in a flash and waved her hand. All the silk and web gathered towards her, layering and weaving together, turning into a tight-fitting garment that wrapped around her. Of course, it was not because of any sense of shame. The clothes woven from the tough spider webs were the best armor. I still don't know who you are? After a while, Li Qingshan came back to his senses. When he opened his eyes, he was still a little confused. When he saw Helicoverpa Rosa's outfit, he was stunned. He couldn't help but laugh. What do you mean by that? Fishing net? Do you want me to help you take it off again? The spider silk was transparent to begin with. Although the layers were intertwined, it was as if she was wearing a layer of thick gauze. Her skin was faintly discernible, and there was a large net on the outside. Her attire was even more alluring than when she was naked. "Why don't you give it a try?" Helicoverpa Rosa said with a smile. Her demonic energy had already recovered by 10%. Don't think that it was just 10%. Now, even if Li Qingshan were to go all out, he would not hesitate to use up the remaining power of will. It was impossible for him to capture her again. "There will be plenty of opportunities, my mother. Then I'll be taking my leave first." Li Qingshan smiled confidently. He flapped his wings of wind and leapt off. Helicoverpa Rosa clenched her fists and felt her heart ease up slightly. Li Qingshan no longer asked about the infant's identity, so she was happy not to answer him. Little did she know that they had already carried out a conversation. If she knew that the infant referred to Li Qingshan as a fellow traveler in the end, she would definitely be so surprised that her jaw would drop. Afterwards, she would reconsider her attitude towards Li Qingshan. The powerful night roamers of the 5 clans surrounded Yi Liusu, Yi Liubua, and so on. Yi Mingzhu considered it before waving her hand too. The elders and powerful members of the Spider Shadow clan also became a part of the encirclement, but they were the furthest away, only on the outskirts. The personal guards under Yi Liusu's lead formed a circle with their backs against each other. They looked around cautiously, but they were rather hesitant, as they came from clans in the first place. Apart from Yi Liusu and Yi Liubua, the others have only been deceived. It's not too late for you to return to your clans, or you'll suffer the same fate as these 2 traitors. Yi Lixiang became more complacent. She believed that as long as she said the word, her daughter would return to her side again. The other matriarchs called out too, summoning the princesses they had sent to serve as spies. They all thought, if we lose this power, the organization that Yi Liusu has built up after so much effort will immediately collapse. It's funny how she actually thinks she's in control. However, to everyone's surprise, while many of them wavered and hesitated, no one stepped forward immediately and returned to their clans. Unknowingly, Yi Liusu had used her ideals and true feelings to influence everyone around her. The corner of Yi Liusu's lips curled slightly, as if she was rather relieved. She looked back and nodded, saying sincerely, "Thank you. The situation is dire right now. Master's fate is uncertain, but I believe he'll definitely return. However, I don't want to force others to take the risk with me. No matter who wants to return to their clans, I won't stop them. If you can survive because of this, it won't be a waste for us sisters." A tall female night roamer went up and wrapped her arm around Yi Liusu's shoulder. She smiled. "Honestly speaking, although I call North Moon Master, he's never given me pleasure in bed, so I don't trust him either. However, I trust you, Yi Liusu." Another night roamer said, "If Master doesn't return, we'll establish another clan. Liusu, you can be the matriarch. We obey North Moon because we obey Ma and Spider Queen's orders. What does his rebelliousness have to do with us? I refuse to believe Ma and Spider Queen can't tell right from wrong." Yi Liusu's heart warmed up. She was touched for some reason, leaving her speechless. Yi Lixiang said furiously, "Yi Liusu, no matter how glib your tongue is, you won't be able to escape death today. If you want her life, you'll have to kill me first." An icy cold voice rang out. The cold-faced Yi Liuxing stood out with the others, entering the encirclement. She gazed at Yi Liusu deeply as indescribable emotions filled her eyes. There was a hint of gentleness in her voice too. "I'll leave the Spider Shadow clan and join you." Yi Liubua saw all of this and felt happy for Yi Liusu from the bottom of her heart. She thought, "Sister, this is where your charm lies. Master was right. You're special." Not only did she fail to make Yi Liusu's organization collapse under her persuasion, but it even boosted her momentum instead. The matriarchs were all stunned. Were they really night roamers? Where did their cold and suspicious temperament go? After the surprise, they felt an even greater threat. They secretly made up their minds. No, this Yi Liusu has to be eliminated, or she might actually be able to unite the clan. "Liuxing, I don't think there's any need for you to leave the Spider Shadow clan, as from now onwards, Yi Liusu will be the new matriarch of the Spider Shadow clan." Yi Mingzhu smiled, but she felt rather reluctant inside. This was an opportunity to strengthen the Spider Shadow clan. If the 2 organizations merged, The Spider Shadow clan would surpass the other 5 clans. There might even be a chance for them to unite the clan. They had gone from fighting 1 against 6 to fighting 2 against 5. Yi Liusu looked at Yi Mingzhu hesitantly, hoping to get help from her mother's wisdom. Yi Mingzhu only said, "Liusu, I believe you will make the right choice." His words were ambiguous. It seemed that he was trying to persuade Yi Liusu to betray him immediately, but it also seemed to mean the opposite. That was because she was actually rather undecided. It was not that she was truly loyal to Li Qingshan. Instead, she could sense Li Qingshan's unusually relaxed attitude. North Moon should be thinking about fleeing as far as possible right now. How can he just watch from the sidelines so easily? Has the situation changed? Has the Spider Queen decided to spare him? But that's impossible. Yi Mingzhu was rather undecided too, so all she could do was let Yi Liusu make the choice herself. "Why aren't you fleeing? Are you waiting for me?" Yi Liusu gazed at Li Qingshan from afar. His gaze seemed to be filled with deep eagerness. He touched her lips gently. The kiss was still warm, reaching deep into her heart. It was said that people could no longer be judged rationally when they were in love. It really was true. She sighed softly and said resolutely, "Looks like I'm not a suitable commander after all. I can't shoulder the heavy responsibility of being the mistress, and I'm not fit to lead my sisters. From now on, Yi Liusu is still Yi Liusu." It was as if a heavy burden had been lifted from her shoulders. She couldn't tell if she was relieved or disappointed. She pulled Yi Liubu's hand and walked towards Li Qingshan. She looked into his scarlet eyes calmly and thought to herself, "Everything I've gained because of you, I'll lose because of you. It's not worth regretting." Li Qingshan returned her smile. He felt much better and said quietly, "You won't regret the choice you've made today. Stop them." Yi Lixiang ordered sternly. She wasn't confident that she could kill North Moon, but she was very confident that she could kill them. The outcome was set. When Spider Queen returned, she would be the first hero. Just as she thought about how complacent she was, she felt her throat tighten. Her eyes widened in disbelief as fear filled her face. Before anyone could even make out what had happened, Li Qingshan had already arrived in front of Yi Lixiang. He grabbed her by the neck and lifted her up gently. Only then did the other night roamers return to their senses. Afterwards they were all stunned, revealing the same expression of disbelief as Yi Lixiang. Underground, everyone knew about Yi Lixiang's strength. She was one of the strongest among the 6 matriarchs. In human terms, she was late foundation establishment. This was also why Yi Lixiang was bold enough to provoke Li Qingshan. Yet now, Yi Lixiang was unable to put up any resistance at all. She had been subdued by Li Qingshan. No one had actually grasped his movements. They all felt a deep chill inside. If his target had been them or anyone else present, no one would have been able to escape. Chapter 500. Biographies of the Great Sage 16. The full text of Biographies of the Great Sage is free to read. Chapter 16. Ru Xian's story came from in the past. Li Qingshan would never have been able to give such an unreasonable order. He could not just kill the matriarch of a clan with a sensitive identity either. It would not be good if he provoked a backlash from the night roamers. Member login. However, he had the confidence and the right to do so now. All of this originated from his own strength. Only absolute strength gave him absolute authority. There was no need for him to resort to trickery or scheming at all. Those who followed him would prosper, while those who opposed him would perish. Violence could not resolve everything, mostly because it was not strong enough. In the past, Helicoverpa wanted them to split up and fight, so they had to split up and fight. Now Li Qingshan wanted them to unite, so they had to unite. Yi Liusu's expression changed a few times. First, she was overjoyed. Not only did she not have to flee, but she had gained even more. Her great undertaking of uniting under one banner had been easily accomplished with a single word from him. Only afterwards did she feel slightly afraid. If she really had followed the ancient laws of the night roamers and betrayed him, then she would have lost everything. Most importantly, she would have lost his heart forever. She would never be able to receive such warmth and protection again. When she thought of that, she could not help but lean a little closer to him. It was an extremely rare occasion for her to show Li Qingshan her delicate side. After this, their hearts had become even closer. However, without absolute strength, it would have been difficult for someone as proud and determined as her to behave like this even when she was deeply in love. Thank you for your gift. Yi Liusu raised her delicate face. Her starry eyes flickered with light. That's not my gift. Even Li Qingshan himself had never thought that after defeating Helicoverpa he would force her to sign an agreement with him. Originally, he planned on using this opportunity to break through to the fourth layer of the tiger demon and then flee. By then, with his strength, it would not be difficult for him to fight for a piece of territory on the surface and sign a non-aggression pact with the 100 schools of thought. He would basically be helping Yi Liusu realize her dream of returning the night roamers to the surface. He looked at Yi Liusu curiously. Li Qingshan smiled but didn't say anything. He was prepared to give her a surprise when the time came. I'll go back to the territory first and take care of the rest. I'll leave it to you. Li Qingshan lightly patted Yi Liusu's perky buttocks and released her. In the past, he would never do such a thing. He had let her look down on him for no reason, but now it seemed very natural. Yes, Yi Liusu felt dizzy, but she kept a straight face and pretended that nothing had happened. Li Qingshan felt that it was very interesting. If there was a chance in the future, he would definitely tease her. Lady Spider Queen, North Moon welcomes your challenge anytime. Ha ha ha. Li Qingshan turned to face Cobweb City and said in a clear voice. After that, he no longer cared about anything else. He unfurled his wings of wind and brought Yi Liubo with him as he tore through the air. Will Lady Spider Queen deal with Big Sister? A fierce wind whistled past, causing the cave to rapidly distort and change. Yi Liubo couldn't see clearly, so she simply retracted her gaze and stared at his face. In his arms, she could only hear the wind but couldn't feel the slightest breeze. This kind of feeling made her feel intoxicated. But then she began to worry about Yi Liusu. Seeing how she still respectfully called Lady Helicoverpa lady in this deserted place, it was clear that she was very dignified. Li Qingshan didn't ask her to change the way she addressed her. It was always right to have a little respect for the strong. Probably not. She can't wait to have such a tie to keep me here. Li Qingshan already had a general understanding of Lady Helicoverpa's temperament. After she returned to being a predator, she would focus all of her attention on him, patiently waiting for a fatal blow. She definitely wouldn't do something harmful just to vent her anger. After a while, they returned to the territory. Yi Liubo was still clinging to him like a koala, unwilling to come down. Oh right, what kind of reward do you want? Li Qingshan smiled. Yi Liusu's complete surrender had pleasantly surprised him, and this girl's performance had never disappointed him either. What do you think? Yi Liubo pouted and rubbed against him. Let's just forget about it for today. Li Qingshan smiled bitterly. After the great battle with Lady Helicoverpa, even if he had an enormous desire, it had completely vanished. If he hadn't been completely satisfied, he would never have let go of Helicoverpa. Even without the spirit turtle's profound shell, he was a little like an old monk meditating, his heart as still as water. Oh, Yi Liubo was immediately disappointed, but she would not go against his wishes. She struggled to hide her resentment. It's a little too rushed right now. I'll wait for you to prepare. When the time comes, Li Qingshan whispered into her ear, comforting this loyal and cute little pet of his. Afterwards, he left behind his mirror clone and left the underground in a hurry. He had been gone for so long, so he wondered if anything had happened on the other side. Little and must have grown impatient from waiting. The Chan monastery of Devanaga was indeed somewhat connected to him. Stealing their signature technique was basically impossible. Even if he underwent another heavenly tribulation, he had no confidence at all. The chant of Devanaga would probably end up with little Anne. Did the strange infant underground, the frog at the bottom of the well, sense the existence of a sliver of opportunity because of this? Helicoverpa's challenge would arrive very soon. It was fine if she did not fight, but once she did, it would definitely be a killing blow. Everything Li Qingshan possessed right now was built on this victory. If he lost, not only would it be him, but Yi Liubua and Yi Liusu who depended on him as well. Only by obtaining the phoenix feather and reaching the first layer of the phoenix transformation could he increase his chances slightly. Letting Helicoverpa Rosa live obviously meant leaving behind a huge problem. However, it also forced him to constantly think of ways to increase his strength. He dared not slack off at all. And looking at the outcome, this choice was still relatively correct. If he really did kill her, the strange infant underground probably would not just stand by and watch. The death of a demon commander was no small matter either. No, you damned woman, you've even included the previous sentence. And you're still counting? You think you can get a word count by talking to yourself? Do you want to hear it or not? Alright, tell me. Li Qingshan would never give her a single spiritual stone. Please settle the accounts first. Li Qingshan exhaled and directly tossed over a large pile of spiritual stones. Ruexian did not hold back at all. She accepted the spiritual stones with a smile and said, "A very, very long time ago. A few days at most. You think you're so smart. Do you know what I'm going to say? A very, very long time ago there was a child called Chu Tian. He was the reincarnation of a celestial being. He was smart and kind. Just pretend I didn't say those words. I won't charge you and saved you 4 spiritual stones. He, my ass. You have to charge for this sentence, right? It's already more than 20 words. That's right. After Li Qingshan completely understood Chu Tian's appearance, figure and family background, he finally heard Ruexian say that Chu Tian had succeeded in building his foundation and came to Mount Lian to challenge him. He could not help but focus. At that moment, the story came to an abrupt end. You've used up all your spiritual stones. If you still want to listen, please continue paying. The complete text of the Great Sage Free Reading _ Chapter 16 Ruexian's story was finished. Chapter 501. Li Qingshan suddenly stood up and opened his eyes. He had even been angered by the Spider Queen, so he wanted to get back at her. The tiger demon's malice had already merged with his bones. Just a sliver of it was enough to frighten mortals to death if they saw it. Even cultivators would feel their hearts skip a beat and feel some fear. However, Ruexian only sipped her tea calmly. She did not take Li Qingshan's actions seriously at all. The corner of her lips even seemed to curl into a complacent smile. When they clashed verbally, victory had always been achieved by infuriating the other party. Now she had basically won this round, so she was overjoyed. Li Qingshan ground his teeth. He really did have a way with her. Even a vicious tiger could not unleash its claws and fangs on a friend. And while he said he was angry, he actually felt a rare sense of peace and tranquility inside. As he sipped his tea and listened to her rambling story, the shadow from underground seemed to recede from him bit by bit. In a daze, he was no longer the moon devil. He recovered some of his human instincts. His tense heartstrings eased up too. If she was just some random person trying to scam him out of his spiritual stones, that would depend on whether they had the life to spend it or not. In order to listen to the full story, all Li Qingshan could do was top up obediently. Ruexian smiled. Thank you for your patronage. If it's too much, it won't be refunded, but if it's too little, I'll have to make it up to you. Fortunately, after Ruexian's scheme succeeded, she did not purposefully drag out the story. She told him everything in a simple manner. Even with that being the case, she still managed to earn almost 10,000 spiritual stones. That bastard really doesn't know what's good for him, Li Qingshan said casually. He did not take it too seriously. A clown like him was no longer worth his attention. More importantly, the Anilam Light Chan Master actually wanted to take Little and to the Chan Monastery of Devanaga. Although Li Qingshan had planned to accompany Little and the timing was a little off. The journey to the Chan Monastery of Devanaga definitely could not be completed in just a few days. 3 to 5 years would be considered fast. The issue was that he had just established a foundation in the Clear River Prefecture. He had yet to reap the fruits of his labor. It would be a pity if he left now. Now he had forcefully unified the night roamers. Collecting spiritual grasses would no longer be like paying tribute like before. Instead, they would be plundering directly. Their harvest would definitely be greater than what they had collected in the past few years. Much, much more. Moreover, he could make full use of the underground resources. He could try to make long-term deals with 100 schools of thought. The income would definitely be considerable, even though ordinary pills were useless to him. However, as long as he accumulated enough spiritual stones, he could go to the Rui Commandery or even better places. He refused to believe he couldn't buy suitable pills there. It was like a farmer who had worked hard and shed a lot of sweat. When the autumn harvest season finally arrived, he was asked to give up his field and open up a new one. No matter who it was, they would feel indignant. Moreover, the hidden danger after Helicoverpa rosa had yet to be resolved. It was even more impossible for him to leave like this. Of course, there was another way, which was for little and to cultivate in the Chan monastery of Devanaga alone. Li Qingshan would remain in the Clear River Prefecture and do whatever he needed to do. However, Li Qingshan had never even considered this method. It was just like the promise he had made in the past. Only death could separate them. Li Qingshan sank into his thoughts. His expression changed for a while before suddenly standing up. I'll go take a look at the 100 schools of thought. If the old monk acted on his own and forcefully took little and back to the Chan monastery of Devanaga, wouldn't that be terrible? There's no need for you to be in such a hurry, master of the Chan monastery of Devanaga. As long as you don't insist on marrying their genius disciple. Ruexian seemed to see through his thoughts. She spoke in a probing manner. Why would I marry her for no reason? As long as you don't think that way. Ruexian let out a sigh of relief before pushing Li Qingshan back into his seat. Suddenly, she said something irrelevant. Do you know that gods have always existed in this world? What? Li Qingshan was taken aback. He had no idea why she had suddenly mentioned this. That's another story. Ruexian smiled. You're still trying to swindle spiritual stones out of me? Li Qingshan raised an eyebrow. Forget it. Seeing how obedient you've been just now, I'll give this story to you for free. Even if you want me to buy it, I have to agree to it. Tell me. You're absent-minded, so let's forget about it today. We'll talk about it once you've settled down. Let's go. I'll go to the 100 schools of thought. Ruexian stood up slowly and made her way towards the entrance of the dwelling with a rather mysterious smile on her lips. I'm not taking over 10,000 spiritual stones from you for free. In the grand hall of the Ansrava temple, the monks stood around in silence. Rings of incense fell from the pagoda as smoke curled up into the air. The Tathagata Buddha lowered his head and smiled. Before the Buddha, an old man and a young woman sat and discussed the Dharma. One was as withered as wood, while the other was as delicate as a flower. The monks were at a loss as to what they were talking about. Mind Enlightenment seemed to understand, but he did not. Little and seemed to be in thought, lowering her head from time to time in deep thought. Often, it would only take a while before she raised her head and continued. The joy on the Anilam Lightchan master's withered face grew heavier and heavier. They had met several years ago, and they had only established their relationship as master. They had not interacted much with each other. Today he wanted to test her and give her some guidance. None of the questions he asked could stump her. She had blazed a new trail in the study of Buddhism, so she had her own comprehension. Her understanding was still rather shallow. However, sometimes she would say something witty which would make him feel like he was talking to a senior. And this so-called shallow was only compared to him, the head monk of the Bodhi courtyard who had cultivated the Buddhist Dharma for several centuries. There was probably no one among the inner disciples of the monastery who could rival her. All he could do was sigh in admiration. The path of white bone and great beauty was not a simple cultivation method. Chapter 502. Li Qingshan felt even more pain than when he endured Zhou Tong's heavenly lightning. It was not because the Anilam Lightchan master wanted to kill him, but because the ox demon and tiger demon reacted violently to the chant of Devanaga. Like boiling oil, they immediately surged. It's rumored that the chant of Devanaga can intimidate all demons and monsters. Sure enough, it's true. Has he discovered something? That's why he's probing me? The Anilum Lightchan master failed to tell that Li Qingshan was a demon. Instead, he was thinking about something else. Not only could the chant of Devanaga subdue demons, but it could also purge the evil and desires in people's hearts. If Li Qingshan really did have some improper thoughts about Little, and he could use this to eliminate them, just in case he brought unnecessary trouble to this trip. If he persisted, he would have to endure extreme pain. However, Li Qingshan's expression only changed slightly before returning to normal. He was even calmer and more composed than when he first came in. Could it be that my judgment was wrong? If that's the case, there's no need to trouble him too much. He has feelings for me, and it's unavoidable that I can't let go of them. If I use forceful methods, I'll end up falling into a disadvantageous position and fall out with this brother of mine. The Anilum Lightchan master stopped the chant of Devanaga. Actually, Li Qingshan had used the spirit turtle suppresses the seas to suppress everything, pacifying the restless ox demon and tiger demon. Like an old monk meditating, the spirit turtle sank into the sea unmoving. Of course, this was also because the Anilum Lightchan master had never used his true abilities. Otherwise, all Li Qingshan could do was retreat in a hurry or transform into his demon form and fight. Is this the special cultivation technique of the Chan Monastery of Devanaga? Li Qingshan asked with a smile. Looks like you're quite open-minded. You do indeed have some affinity with the Buddha. What? The chant of Devanaga? The monks were all surprised. Apart from Little Anne, no one else had sensed anything during the probing and clash just now. May I teach it to Little Anne? Li Qingshan asked in a probing manner. Li Qingshan arrived on Benevolence Island alone and sighed inside. This phoenix feather sure isn't easy to come by. This secret art is different from other martial arts. Only senior brother Abbot is qualified to teach it, and he has to go through many tests. This was the Anilum Lightchan master's reply. As an eminent monk of Buddhism, he would never lie, let alone lie about something so important that everyone knew about. Li Qingshan was helpless too. He had agreed to pay a visit to the Chan Monastery of Devanaga with Little, and once, he dealt with the matter of the Clear River Prefecture. This was Little Anne's intentions in the first place, so the Anilum Lightchan master had nothing else to say. He left Little Anne behind to continue his lecture. As Li Qingshan walked towards the School of Medicine, he was still thinking about the second story that Ru Xian had told him. At the time he had been too anxious about Little Anne to care about it, but now that he thought about it, he felt that it had a profound meaning. Although Ru Xian's mouth was not forgiving, she had never really tried to extort his spirit stones. He could feel that even if he did not care and was willing to give, she would not take it. After listening for a while, he discovered that Ru Xian was not on Benevolence Island. She had gone to the library on Contention Island. Suddenly, he felt an extremely resentful gaze land on him. Li Qingshan raised his head and saw a twisted face behind a window. It was rather familiar. It was Chu Tian. Li Qingshan waved his hand with a smile, but the face became even more twisted. At this moment, another woman arrived at the window. To no surprise, it was Chen Rongji. She glanced at Li Qingshan with a rather strange expression before closing the curtains. Is he protecting his food? Little Tian stopped looking. There will be a day when you become even more powerful than him. There was no pity in Chen Rongji's gaze. Instead, it was filled with trust and eagerness. No man could resist a gaze like this when they were down on their luck. Chu Tian was no exception. He shuddered and threw himself into Chen Rongji's arms, sobbing. I don't have anything anymore. Chen Rongji gently rubbed his head with her glove. Her gaze was as gentle as a mother's, looking at her down on her child. However, the hell snake became restless. It slithered around her body reluctantly. She comforted it like a mother. Don't worry. There'll be food very soon. Chu Tian had indeed lost many things. After Ru Xian brought him back to Benevolence Island, his symptoms of qi deviation stabilized miraculously. Afterwards, Chen Rongji rushed over. Her eyes were red as she stuttered. Under Chu Tian's interrogation, she finally told him an extremely unfortunate piece of news. When he was in secluded cultivation, the two women who had come to the school of the family with him had both died in the chaos of war. He and the two women were childhood friends, so they were extremely close. Chu Tian was overcome with grief. He suffered chi deviation once more and almost lost his life. Afterwards, a miracle happened to him once more. He barely managed to keep his life, as if the heavens were truly watching over him. However, his cultivation had regressed drastically. You still have me. Qian Rongji turned her head away as if she could not bear it anymore. Tears streamed down her face uncontrollably. And I'm the only one left. The viper hissed. Uncle Fu, why are you here? Li Qingshan arrived at the depository and saw a familiar person, Sun Fubai. The sunlight shone through the window, and Sun Fubai laid on a rocking chair leisurely as he read a book. It was just like when they first met. Qingshan, you've come. Only after a conversation did Li Qingshan learn that the depository had always belonged to the School of Novels. The buildings on Contention Island all had different responsibilities. Most of them were managed by people from various schools. However, the School of Novels had almost fallen to the point where they could not even keep Cloudwisp Island. They had no younger brothers or teachers, so the depository was managed by the School of Confucianism. Now, the School of Novels had pulled itself together and returned to the school. At the crucial moment of breaking through to Foundation establishment, Sun Fubai had unloaded the matters of the Cloudwisp Society and returned to the depository to cultivate himself. Under his management, the Cloudwisp Society had become a complete organization. There was no need for him to personally attend to everything. Books were piled up on shelves, the fragrance of wood refreshing the mind. Chapter 503. But since there is no God in the world, what does Ru Xian mean by letting him read these things? Li Qingshan is not surprised that Ru Xian can guess his identity as the North Moon. He is not Superman. As long as he changes into a tight suit of S size and puts on a pair of black-rimmed glasses, he can keep the female reporter in the dark forever. Either the female reporter is a moron, or she doesn't take him a loser in her eyes at all. The taste of Superman who likes her is really not good. Li Qingshan personally believed his taste was much better. Ru Xian's intelligence and wisdom were rare in the world too. Surely she could not have specially drawn him here in such a serious manner and found such a great pile of books for him to read just to tell him that, hey, I know who you are. It's great to become the water god, but it's a pity that you were born too late. You can see it but you can't eat it, hee. Wait. Li Qingshan's face suddenly becomes a little strange because in his mind, he imagines that Ru Xian will say these words proudly, thinking that she can really do such a thing. He coughs twice, dispels this kind of nonsense, calms down and continues to read. At dusk the sun turns orange, casting his long shadow on the floor. Li Qingshan finally sees the last book, and the desire in his heart becomes stronger. If he can refine a body of water and make it the underwater mansion, the speed of cultivation will be improved a lot. And with the geographical advantage, even if the Jindan realm invades, he can deal with it calmly, turning passivity into initiative. Hey, Ru Xian, what do you mean? Are you kidding me? It is late. Li Qingshan comes to Benevolence Island and finds Ru Xian in the alchemy room to denounce her. His face is full of disappointment and anger. Ah, you finally find out. You are so smart. Ru Xian says with a smile. She looks like her plot has succeeded, but she is a little disappointed in her heart. You already know. Li Qingshan was enraged, but then he calmed down and smiled. Know what? Ru Xian said in exasperation. Idiot, Ru Xian interrupted. I'm going to take Little and to the Chan Monastery of Devanaga. Li Qingshan did not become angry. Instead he sighed gently. Why? Ru Xian looked at the pill furnace in front of her and asked casually. His heart trembled slightly. Actually, I wanted to tell you that this is the best choice for little Anne. And I offended my boss. I can't really stay in the Clear River Prefecture any longer. You finished reading all the books I gave you. Others might not understand which boss Li Qingshan had offended, but Ru Xian knew very well. She felt inexplicably anxious. I read a small part of it, but it didn't seem to be of any use. I guessed you were messing with me. Sigh, if only that was possible. It should be enough to fend off my boss. Idiot. He was clearly only one step away. Forget it. I won't get angry with you today. Actually, Before I leave, there are some things I want to tell you. Li Qingshan's gaze suddenly became tender. Ru Xian's gaze made contact with his. Then she looked away again. Where are the books? She would not say anything to make him stay, but at the very least, she had to make him completely understand his current situation. This idiot. You're still hiding them. That's good. Wait here for me. I'll be right back. Ru Xian specially told Sun Fubai that if Li Qingshan could not finish reading the books, he was to stow them away and not let anyone else touch them. Ha 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 ha, who's the one being fooled now? Li Qingshan suddenly laughed aloud and raised his right hand. An hour ago, when the last book was flipped to the first page, he saw a thin piece of something mixed in the title page. It was completely transparent like ice or water. It twisted and turned like a dragon, forming a simple and magnificent rune. At first glance, Li Qingshan knew it was not an ordinary item. As long as he dispersed the spiritual chi of mountains and rivers condensed within, he could still use it elsewhere. The Hawkwolf Guard had grumbled about this quite a lot. Li Qingshan beamed inside. The notebook should have been very old. By now, the Mist Province had already fallen into chaos. The Hawkwolf Guard had withdrawn their forces to the level of a commandery, so it was no longer clear who was destroying who. In other words, a Hawkwolf Guard on the level of the Clear River Prefecture no longer existed in the Mist Province. This made sense. After several years of war, now the Clear River Prefecture had already withdrawn the Hawkwolf Guard on the lowest level, withdrawing all of its forces. If the war escalated again, and demon commanders like Helicoverpa Rosa ran amok, withdrawing the Hawkwolf Guard in the Clear River Prefecture would only make sense. After reading the last page of the notebook, Li Qingshan gained some guesses about the origins of the God Seal. There were many God Seals in the Mist Province, but not all of them had been left behind before the founding emperor established the 9 provinces. There were territories beyond the 9 provinces. They could completely avoid the suppression of the cauldrons of the 9 provinces and condense a God Seal outside before bringing it back to the 9 provinces. However, this was extremely difficult to achieve. Condensing a God Seal took up an extremely great amount of time and effort. It was recorded in the form of a few decades at a time. If it was just for sale, it would not be worth it. The Hawkwolf Guard suspected this to be related to the merfolk of the South Sea, as merfolk were born with the ability to control water. Condensing a water God Seal was relatively easy, and they had long lifespans too. As it seemed, the Hawkwolf Guard's guess was probably correct. Ru Xian happened to possess the bloodline of merfolk. Li Qingshan could be regarded as a member of the Hawkwolf Guard, but he had never heard of something like this. It was probably because the Green Province was right next to the Dragon Province, so no demons were bold enough to act recklessly. Probably even the Dragon King of the Sea would not allow it. However, now that the Treaty of Kings was about to collapse where blood flowed like rivers, something like this was nothing. They had even committed murder and arson, so why would they be afraid of stealing some water and electricity? What a great gift! If it were not for the fact that he was in the treasury, Li Qingshan basically wanted to laugh aloud. If Ru Xian were standing before him, perhaps he would hug her and kiss her a few times. Compared to the value of the divine seal, the 10,000 spiritual stones were not even worth mentioning. Even in the Mist Province, a God Seal like that would fetch an astronomical price. It would probably be even rarer in the Green Province. If it were up to Li Qingshan to buy it, he would even be willing to pay 100,000 or 1,000,000 spiritual stones. After all, was there anything more important than speeding up his cultivation and ensuring his safety as a cultivator? In retrospect, Li Qingshan realized that Ru Xian's teasing was actually more like a test. If he did not have the patience to listen to her, or if he was stingy with the spiritual stones and refused to give it to her, if he could not even listen to the first story, there obviously would not be a second story. If he ignored her efforts and refused to read through all the books one by one, he would miss out on this priceless God Seal. It was right here. It just depended on whether he had the patience or not. Would it be the same if he wanted to obtain her heart? Li Qingshan stowed the books and God Seal away. After informing Sun Fubai, he directly made his way to Benevolence Island. Ru Xian stared at the God Seal in Li Qingshan's hand. She had no idea whether she should be angry or happy. Chapter 504. No one came to visit Chu Tian, whether it was his seniors and juniors from the school of Confucianism or the women he had slept with in the past. If Chu Tian had been an amiable person, he would not have ended up in such a state even if his cultivation had regressed drastically. At the very least, he would have been able to maintain his dignity. However, his personality had never been well liked. They were usually polite to him only because of his talent. There was probably deep jealousy in this as well. It was unavoidable for them to think things like, even an idiot like him can cultivate so quickly, so why can't I? The heavens are so unfair. As a result, when they learned that he had suffered from qi deviation, they all secretly rejoiced. Even you have a day like this. Who would still be willing to waste time on a cripple? There was only one person who cared for him relentlessly, and that was Qian Rongji. However, seeing how caring for him was useless, a sliver of pity suddenly appeared in her eyes. Little Tian, even if you really can't cultivate anymore, I'll take care of you for the rest of your life. Chu Tian was like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. He said excitedly, I can still cultivate. Those people who look down on me will definitely regret it. However, Qian Rongji's pity deepened. He suddenly fell silent for a while before saying, Rongji, I want to tell you a secret. I've never told anyone about this secret. What is it? Qian Rongji was confused. Watch closely. Chu Tian extended his right hand, and a dark green vine grew from his palm bit by bit. It was only a small vine, but it gave off a simple yet vigorous feeling. Qian Rongji experienced a strange feeling. Although the vine grew from Chu Tian's palm, it led to another world. Little Tian, is this an arcane treasure? This had exceeded her expectations slightly. Previously, she had plenty of opportunities to capture Chu Tian alive, and then torture him for a confession. It was all because she had no idea what this trump card of Chu Tian's was and how powerful it was. She did not want to go for wool and come home shorn. As a result, she had endured it all for this moment. No, this is a heaven climbing vine. This is a climbing vine, its seed when I was born. Bury it in my soul. As long as I have it, I will definitely be able to restore my cultivation. That's fantastic. Tian. Qian Rongji's eyes sparkled as she thought to herself, thank you, little Anne. It was already late at night. Chu Tian lay motionless on the sickbed. His eyes were round, staring straight up. A gorgeous little snake slithered out of his face and climbed up his fair arm. Qian Rongji opened her palm, and the little snake spat out a seed, which fell into her palm like a drop of water. It melted in the blink of an eye. She patted the little snake's head. If it wasn't for you, it would have been really troublesome to extract the seed of the sky-climbing vine. Chu Tian wasn't a very smart person. Since he had exposed his biggest secret, he couldn't help but sigh. Qian Rongji soon learned everything about this sky-climbing vine. He finally understood the secret behind Chu Tian's cultivation speed. Qian Rongji opened her palm, and the sky-climbing vine slowly grew. Its dark green roots were so slender and weak, but they clearly broke through the invisible barrier of space. They arrived in another world. Immediately, a wave of extremely pure spiritual energy flowed into her body through the vines. Even the 100 schools of thought, which had been operating for thousands of years, could not compare to the density of spiritual energy here. Perhaps because the sky-climbing vine was still very young, the amount of spiritual energy here was not much. It was not even as much as the spiritual energy extracted from a spirit stone. However, this was not just a difference in quantity but a difference in quality. If there's nothing else, you can leave first. It's already so late. It's not good for a man and a woman to be alone in a room. I'm not afraid, I want to take care of him. I think you've already taken care of him, don't take care of him to death, you'll break the rules here. Wuxia chuckled. Alright. Qian Rongji's heart trembled. She lowered her head, feeling a terrifying aura from Wuxia. She clenched her fists even tighter, then looked back at Chu Tian who was lying on the sickbed. Having lost the sky-climbing vine, he seemed to have turned into a vegetable, motionless with his eyes wide open, specks of dust falling on them. In fact, his situation was much worse than a vegetable. It was said that a vegetable still had a certain degree of consciousness, But after going through the torture of Hell's snake, his consciousness had completely collapsed, leaving him with only a breath left. No matter how powerful Wuxian's medical skills were, she could no longer cure him. Thinking of this, Qian Rongji moved aside, brushing past Wuxian. The door of the ward closed again, separating the two of them. Is this the end of insanity and madness? Wuxian shook her head gently and muttered to herself. Behind her, a vicious, terrifying figure that seemed inhuman yet inhuman flashed. Qian Rongji loosened her fists, and the sky-climbing vine and Hell's snake both retracted into her body. She made her way to the end of the corridor without turning back. From that moment onwards, the curse and blessing would exist together. No one knew where she would go. After Li Qingshan left Wuxian's place, the sermon on Ansrava Island did not end. The Anilam Lightchan master wanted to pass on a few more things to his disciple before he left, so that he could close the distance between them. Little Anne, on the other hand, stopped worrying after learning about Li Qingshan's safety. He devoted himself to discussing with the Anilam Lightchan master so that he could increase his comprehension of the path of Whitebone and great beauty. The Anilam Lightchan master could not help but become even more delighted. As it turned out, this disciple of his had not unleashed his full power yet, which made him even more cautious. Right when Li Qingshan wanted to return to Cloudwisp Island first and slowly consider how he should use the Water God seal, Wang Puxi sent another message, telling him that he was waiting for him in the Clear River Prefecture. When Li Qingshan transformed into the North Moon, he had already ignored many messages. He could not just turn down the request, so he could only go. Arriving in the Clear River Prefecture, just now, he discovered that Wang Puxi was not the only one waiting for him. In the large hall, Wang Puxi and Hua Sengzan sat in the seats of honor. On the wall behind them was a hawk forged from copper, spreading its wings and staring at Li Qingshan with shining eyes. It made him think of Gu Yenying. Almost 100 hawkwolf guards stood to the left and right according to their duties and cultivation, their hands behind their backs. This was basically all the hawkwolf guards that remained in the entire Clear River Prefecture. Old Wang, don't tell me you've sent a punitive expedition to punish me with such a great array of people? Li Qingshan asked with a smile as the door slammed shut behind him. Li Qingshan, you fled in the face of danger and hid in your dwelling to cultivate. What do you think your punishment is? Wang Puxi asked right away. I was at a critical juncture in my cultivation. I only broke through after so much difficulty, so how can you call that fleeing in the face of danger? Not to mention, it's not like I knew you'd be in such great danger. Li Qingshan shrugged and shot a glance at Hua Sengzan. Chapter 505. Hell was a place where all crimes were judged. It was the ultimate symbol of the dignity of a prison. Once disciples of legalism reached a certain level of cultivation, they could draw out a sliver of aura from the endless hell and merge it with their own cultivation. As soon as they struck, they would possess the great dignity of hell, suppressing the enemy's aura. Every single attack would bring with it intense pain that originated from the soul, shaking the enemy's mind. I don't know what you're trying to do, but this kind of probing is very boring. Li Qingshan remained composed, ignoring the pressure and enduring the pain. Wang Puxi's expression changed, and there was the sound of ice cracking. Li Qingshan took a step forward. He radiated with chilling coldness, leaving behind an ice footprint with each step. He seemed to be rather sluggish, but that was also because he refused to expose his strength. He did not use his demon chi abilities. Instead, he used the arts of the boundless ocean. Spiritual chi surged out from his sea of chi, purging the coldness. However, there were still slivers of coldness that stuck to him like maggots, difficult to purge, but he did not take it to heart. The teacup beside Wang Puxi had already been frozen. Suddenly, cracks appeared on its surface, and it exploded loudly. The temperature plummeted once again. The chilling wind pierced through every opening. The hawkwolf guards had all retreated to the edge of the hall, but they were still forced to circulate their true chi to block it. They turned their heads away, afraid to look at Wang Puxi. Even a glance from the corner of their eyes would make them shiver inside. They were like criminals who had committed unpardonable crimes, currently standing before their judges. No matter how vicious they were, they would still tremble in fear. afraid to face the dignity of the law. Crack! Crack! The sounds of freezing rose and fell. Frost crawled over the pillars, covering the entire hall. Another sound gradually drowned out the sounds of freezing. It came from Li Qingshan. It was the sound of waves. Spiritual qi surged out from him like the tide, wanting to surge in all directions. Not only did his presence not weaken, but it even grew stronger instead. Li Qingshan remained unhurried. He walked forward step by step, staring straight into Wang Puxi's eyes. He was completely lawless. The coldness of the hell of ice seeps in through every opening. My cultivation level is higher than his, so he should have been injured by the cold air that invaded his body. Why does he seem to be completely fine? This kid is indeed not ordinary. Perhaps Commander Gu's order is not without reason. Wang Puxi was already in the middle stage of foundation establishment, so he was naturally superior to Li Qingshan, who was in the early stage of foundation establishment. Although the gap between minor realms was not as exaggerated as the gap between major realms, it was not just for show. However, in terms of spiritual qi, Li Qingshan, who cultivated the arts of the boundless ocean, had many advantages. And Wang Puxi's technique had the advantage. However, it did not appear on Li Qingshan at all. Finally, Li Qingshan stopped 3 feet away from Wang Puxi. 2 streams of spiritual qi collided fiercely between the two of them. It was as if the sea in winter was sealed by ice and washed away by the waves. All right, that's enough. If you continue, even if you can stand it, the house won't be able to. Hua Sengzan's hands landed on Li Qingshan and Wang Puxi's shoulders at the same time. The two of them retracted their spiritual energy. Wang Puxi's armchair. The armchair that Wang Puxi originally sat on immediately shattered into a pile of ice. Commander, please give the order. Hua Sengzan took a step back and stood beside Li Qingshan. For once, he became stern, referring to Wang Puxi as Commander. Commander Gu's order. Li Qingshan has made outstanding contributions and performed well, so he is hereby promoted to Scarlet Hawk Commander of the Hawk Wolf Guard of the Clear River Prefecture. Wang Puxi finished rather reluctantly. With that, not only was Li Qingshan surprised, but the many Hawk Wolf Guards were all surprised too. They had been notified to gather, but they never thought it would be something so major. Only now did Li Qingshan understand why Wang Puxi had arranged such a great show. As it turned out, Gu Yenying had actually promoted him to commander. Don't tell me she's also afraid I'll go to the Chan Monastery of Devanaga with little, and so she's giving me some benefits? No, it's not just benefits. Being made a commander isn't something you can just turn your back on. If I want to leave the Clear River Prefecture, I need her, the great commander, to agree. Of course, Li Qingshan did not believe Gu Yenying had developed feelings for him after his confession. She probably still treated him as a relatively important chess piece. Hua Sengzan clapped her hands, and Hua Qinglu entered from a side door in scarlet clothes. She held the brand new uniform of a Scarlet Hawk Commander, with a tiny scarlet bronze hawk tablet on it. She smiled. Congratulations, Big Brother Li. No, Commander Li. I was wondering why old Wang had such a bad temper. Looks like he's been fired. Li Qingshan laughed aloud. Wang Puxi shot a glance at him. Hua Sengzan said in a hurry, "Don't talk nonsense, Qingshan. Old Wang is going to be promoted to a White Wolf Guard and is going to the Rui Commandery. He's leaving the quagmire that is the Clear River Prefecture. This is fantastic news." Wang Puxi was indeed rather displeased, but it was not because of him. Being promoted to a White Wolf Guard and going to the Rui Commandery had always been his wish. However, he felt like the position should have been taken over by Hua Sengzan. However, after this series of probing, he could not help but admit that Li Qingshan's strength was indeed greater than Hua Sengzan's. He was completely worthy of the position of commander. You're lucky, kid. You've gained Commander Gu's appreciation. This is called strength. However, Li Qingshan was thinking about something else. The war had only just come to an end, yet Gu Yenying had already transferred a general away. Clearly, she was extremely confident that the humans and demons would not continue fighting. Where did this confidence come from? It probably came from him. In the blink of an eye, Li Qingshan had changed into the uniform of a Scarlet Hawk Commander. He stood with his arms behind his back, looking around proudly and valiant. He had already become the commander of the Hawkwolf Guard of the Clear River Prefecture. Wang Puxi and Hua Sengzan stood to the left and right, making way for him in the center. "Greetings, Commander." Almost 100 Hawkwolf Guards lined up again and bowed together as they said loudly. Li Qingshan glanced past everyone and thought, will this still be my group in the future? Qian Rongji doesn't seem to be here. In the past, when he discussed the 3 minor pillars of the Clear River Prefecture with Protector Yen from the Iron Fist or whatever, had he ever considered that he would be one of them? However, with his current insight, that was nothing. The expressions of the Hawkwolf Guards changed as well. They all had their own thoughts. Some of the Scarlet Wolf Guards had even drunk with Li Qingshan before. The kid from the countryside from several years ago had actually become their superior in just a few years' time. Hua Sengzan clapped his hands again, and over a dozen tables of food were set up to celebrate Li Qingshan and send off Wang Puxi. This was only a farewell banquet for the Hawkwolf Guard. There would definitely be more in the 100 schools of thought in the future, so Wang Puxi would not be able to leave anytime soon. "Little Hua, this position was originally supposed to go to you. Why don't we switch?" During the banquet, Li Qingshan also realized why Wang Puxi was displeased, so he smiled at Hua Sengzan. He really did not care about this position. "Do you think this is like buying groceries? You think you can switch whenever you want?" Hua Sengzan sensed Li Qingshan's sincerity, so the sliver of ill will in his heart vanished without a trace. He was rather touched. He raised his cup and said, "This is called the latecomer surpassing the master. Bosku, you have a good eye for talent. You have to protect me a little more in the future." No problem, no problem. Though, I'll leave the matters of the Hawkwolf Guard to you. I'm only responsible for watching over and fighting." Hua Sengzan smiled bitterly. No problem, no problem. After the banquet came a series of handover tasks. After assuming the position of commander, he could choose an item from the inner treasury of the Hawkwolf Guard. It would be great if I could find another fragment of the cursive sword calligraphy. With this beautiful wish in mind, Li Qingshan passed through the various formations and finally set foot inside, but he was greatly disappointed. After several years of war, there was not a lot left inside. Why don't we wait? Looking at the situation, the Rui Commandery might send over supplies very soon. Hua Sengzan also sensed something from Gu Yiniying's orders. As it seemed, the war really was about to end. During the war, the Clear River Prefecture that spanned 1,500 kilometers had become a lone island, basically cut off from the outside world. The cultivators there could only fight, not flee, unless they had special connections. If they fled, they would be hunted down. Of course, they would not receive any supplies of talismans or pills either. Fair enough. Li Qingshan nodded, even though he did not find what he wanted. However, Li Qingshan discovered that there were quite a few benefits to being a commander. First of all, the benefits were much better. With Li Qingshan's wealth, he did not care too much about this. What mattered was the increase in status. He had gone from a hired thug to a decision-maker. He could directly influence many important decisions of the entire 100 schools of thought. And he could grasp a lot of confidential information. As a military organization directly under the Great Xia Empire, the Hawkwolf Guard possessed its own information system. The information seemed messy and disorderly, covering everything from astronomy to geography. However, at certain times perhaps it could play a crucial role. After completing a series of handover tasks, the sky had already lit up. Li Qingshan shirked all responsibility, leaving everything to Hua Sengzan. He returned to the Chain Mountains alone. With a swish, the mental map of the Green Province unfurled before locking onto the tiny Clear River Prefecture. Li Qingshan began to make his choice. He chose a suitable place to establish the water dwelling. His gaze first landed on the river that meandered through the entire prefecture like a dragon. Although it was tiny, the size of the Clear River Prefecture was even larger than the entire Jiangnan region in Li Qingshan's past life. The Clear River water could rival large rivers like the Yangtze and Yellow Rivers. The Clear River originated from the Boundless Mountains. It was over 5,000 kilometers in length, and its drainage basin spanned over 1 million square kilometers. If he could refine it, whether it was cultivation or battle, It would be equivalent to receiving divine assistance. Even if he faced golden core cultivators, Li Qingshan was confident he could gain the upper hand. However, Li Qingshan took out the water god seal and took a look at it according to the books he had read in the past. There were basically only 2 types of god seals, but their quality differed drastically. He could condense a water god seal by refining a small river, but it could not contain a large river. Only by using the small river as a foundation could he constantly develop and strengthen it. I wonder whether the water god seal can contain the clear river or not. If it can't contain it in the end, then it'll be a joke. It's not like I have any competitors right now, so I better take it step by step and plan slowly. I'll choose a region of water first and start with the tributary of the river. To be continued. However, after some thought, he followed the river and found a small river that flowed into the large river. Although it was a small river, it was at least 100 feet wide. Let's try this small river first. Li Qingshan dove into the river. The contents of the dozens of books appeared in his mind. Through a few sentences, he roughly understood the method of refining water veins. With the water god seal, it was not particularly difficult to refine an ownerless water vein. He held the divine seal in his hand and injected demonic qi into it. The divine seal shone like a dragon and snake coiling around it. Li Qingshan released his demonic qi again. The vast demonic qi spread to both sides of the river in the blink of an eye. The surging river instantly became as smooth as a mirror, without a single ripple. A moment later it returned to normal just now. Li Qingshan went against the flow, releasing and infusing demonic qi continuously. Refining water veins was a meticulous task. Although the divine seal in his hand could save him a lot of trouble, he still had to walk through the entire water region bit by bit, allowing his demonic qi to infuse every part of the water region. This tributary was not very long. 6 hours later, Li Qingshan finally reached the source of the river. In his sea of consciousness, a faint blue meandering path was clearly left. Li Qingshan retracted his demonic qi and pointed at the water god seal in his hand. The water god seal released a wave-like halo. When the halo calmed down, a small part of it lit up. The meandering path was exactly the same as the one in Li Qingshan's sea of consciousness. Li Qingshan was overjoyed. Only a small part had lit up, which meant that this small river was far from the water vein that the water god seal could contain. He was more confident about refining Qingting Lake. At the same time, he sensed that the entire water vein was in his control. Waves of water spiritual qi merged into his body through the water god seal. Although it was not very powerful, it was endless. From this moment onwards, he was the god of this river. Even without using demonic qi, he could control the flow of water like an extension of his arm. Next, it was time to refine the main river. A drizzle fell. An old fisherman wearing a straw raincoat and a conical bamboo hat sat at the bow of his boat, fishing. From time to time, he would pick up the flask of wine beside him and take a sip in a leisurely manner. Suddenly, he saw the float sink and hurriedly pulled the line. The thin line was pulled taut, but it would not budge. Had it hooked onto a rock? The boat tilted slightly. The old fisherman could vaguely see a huge shadow swimming past in the water. Shocked, he hurriedly threw down his fishing rod and retreated. With a splash, a carp leapt out of the water. This was a sight that the old fisherman had seen his entire life, but he was dumbfounded in shock, his mouth agape. This was because that carp was shockingly several times larger than his boat. The carp also widened its eyes and opened its mouth, trying to swallow the old fisherman. Its entire body was covered in fiery red scales, but its back was dyed black like ink, vaguely resembling a black lotus. "Don't be arrogant, fish monster." The old fisherman's reaction was not slow. He stepped on the bow of the boat, and the bow of the boat sank into the water before being lifted up by the buoyancy. He used the force to leap up, sweeping towards the riverbank. He was actually a first-rate expert. Boom! The boat was crushed by the carp, wooden fragments flying in all directions. A large hole was formed on the surface of the river, turning into a whirlpool. The old fisherman felt pain all over his body. He had been injured by the wooden fragments, but he could not care about this right now. He lowered his head and looked at the water. The carp fell into the water and floated up again, opening its mouth and waiting for him below. The old fisherman was an expert, but he could not fly, nor did he know how to step on his right foot with his left foot. He did not even have anything to push off in the air, so he could only watch as he fell towards the fish's mouth. My life is over. At this moment, the carp suddenly closed its mouth, turning around and diving into the water. With a plop, the old fisherman fell into the water. He was about to swim to the riverbank when he turned his head and saw that the surface of the water upstream had suddenly become extremely smooth, floating downstream like a mirror. What is it this time? The old fisherman's expression changed drastically. Clearly, the fish monster had been scared off. In the blink of an eye, there were no longer any ripples on the surface of the water around him. Something brushed past him, and in that moment all his hair stood on end. His mind felt like it had fallen into an icy cavern, and his limbs and bones all froze as he fell towards the center of the river. A moment later, the surface of the river returned to normal just now. The old fisherman emerged from the water and spat out a mouthful of water, collapsing on the riverbank in a sorry state. He had wanted to eat fish, but he had not been able to. He had almost been eaten by a fish. The waters of the river were too deep. It looked like he could only fish in the stream in the future. There seems to be a demon chi up ahead. Let's go take a look. When Li Qingshan refined the small river, he did not even encounter a single decent demon. It was probably because the water was too shallow and could not contain demons. Only when he refined the large river did he finally encounter a few. However, most of them had not even formed a demon core. They were just much larger than their peers, and their intelligence was lacking. They were still beasts. His plan to capture a few shrimp soldiers and crab soldiers to be on duty had failed. Now that he had finally encountered a decent one, he could not help but pay attention. It sure runs fast. Li Qingshan swam forward for a while longer, but the demon chi had already disappeared. He could only advance slowly if he wanted to refine the rivers of water. This large river was much wider than the small one, and the water was also more abundant. Although Li Qingshan had already grasped some experience in refining rivers of water, he still could not increase his speed. However, when he thought about it, he was not in a hurry. Underground, among the demon soldiers under his command, the Blackwater Salamander and Ice Frog were both water-type demons. He could have them serve when the time came. 2 days later, in the early morning, Li Qingshan finally returned to his starting point. At the end of the large river by Clear Court Lake, facing the rising sun in the east, he opened his hand, and the water god's seal flashed. Chapter 507. For the Clear Court sect to be able to occupy such a piece of blessed land, it naturally wasn't without foundation. The sect master of the Clear Court sect, Yang Pingu, who was known as the Master of the Clear Court, had already cultivated to the late stage of foundation establishment, although there was still a gap between him and Zhou Tong, who was at the peak of foundation establishment. Although he was still a distance away from peak foundation establishment like Zhou Tong, he was confident that even if the Moon Devil came personally, he would be able to defend himself with the layers of formations outside the island and his own cultivation. Master, bad news, bad news. On this day, Yang Pingu was cultivating in seclusion in his cave abode. His disciple's call came from outside. Although he was a little unhappy, he still interrupted his cultivation and opened the door. If it was not important, his disciple would not disturb him. What's wrong? What happened? Why are you so flustered? There's demonic chi in the lake. What's so strange about that? If there are demons in the lake, there will naturally be demons. Yang Pingu frowned unhappily. Clear Court Lake was so vast. There would often be fish, prawns and aquatic creatures that would accumulate enough spirit chi to turn into demons. His Clear Court sect had been established for 1,000 years and had slain many demons. Why would he be afraid of mere demonic chi? However, he casually scanned with his spiritual will and was shocked. He understood why his disciple was so flustered. The demonic chi did not come from a certain place. Instead, it permeated the entire clear court lake and surrounded the lone island from all directions. Such vast demonic chi can only be possessed by a demon general. However, why is he spreading it like this? Is he trying to refine Clear Court Lake? That's impossible unless he has the water god seal. As the leader of a sect and having lived hundreds of years longer than Li Qingshan, Yang Pinggu was extremely knowledgeable. In an instant he guessed the gist of the matter. His expression turned even more solemn. If this Clear Court Lake really has an additional water god of the demon clan, then there will be no place for the Clear Court sect. If you want to become a water god, you have to get past me first. Yang Pinggu would not go out to fight to the death with that demon general. As long as Clear Court sect's formations were not broken and the sect was still established, that demon general would not be able to refine Clear Court Lake completely and become a water god. Thinking about it, he felt that it was not safe enough and sent the news to the 100 schools of thought. Also, the various large sects wouldn't just ignore such a huge matter. The process of refining Clear Court Lake. It was much more difficult than refining a mere river. After spending half a month, Li Qingshan just now had refined Clear Court Lake by half. Looking at the isolated island in the distance, Li Qingshan rubbed his chin. In any case, there was no way he could hide this kind of thing. He might as well move the carriage and see who would dare to stop him. As for this holdout in front of him, it would be fine if he was willing to move out obediently, but if he was unwilling, he would have to forcefully demolish it. The person inside, come out! Li Qingshan broke through the water, stepped on the top of the wave and shouted. This roar, like a bolt of lightning, it struck the formation around Qingting sect, causing 100 feet wave. The thick fog that never dissipated also showed signs of dispersing. Not good. It's Moon Devil. The voice spread across the entire island. When Yang Pinggu saw the red figure, his expression changed drastically. He had thought that some water elemental demon general was taking advantage of the situation to cause trouble, but he didn't expect it to be the Moon Devil himself. Chapter 508. Spare. Spare my life. Yang Pinggu knew that a great disaster was about to befall him. His eyes were wide open, filled with unwillingness and deep regret. I won't forgive you. Li Qingshan gripped the dragon-seizing pitchfork tightly and stabbed it into Yang Pinggu's chest. The tip of the pitchfork was already dyed red when it came out from his back. Yang Pinggu's eyes widened with hatred as he breathed his last. The past sect leaders of the Clear Court sect had used this dragon-seizing pitchfork to capture and kill countless monsters in the Clear Court Lake. But in the end they died to their own family's inherited magic tool, which was in line with the cycle of karma. You really can't get over it. Li Qingshan shook his head and casually threw Yang Pinggu's corpse into his 100 treasures pouch. Yang Pinggu actually had many tricks up his sleeves, but under that kind of speed and attack, other than activating the dragon-seizing pitchfork and throwing a few life-saving talismans, he didn't even have the time to cast a single spell. The difference in strength of a realm was like the difference between heaven and earth. Li Qingshan relied on the 4th tier of the Ox Demon to match Helicoverpa rosa in terms of strength, stamina, and vitality. However, he was almost captured alive countless times. After breaking through to the 4th layer of the Tiger Demon, aside from the lack of demon chi, he was practically equivalent to a demon commander in every other aspect. If Yang Pinggu had cultivated a body-tempering method, he might have been able to endure a direct assault from a demon commander that aimed to kill him. However, he did not, so he could not even endure a single blow. Li Qingshan opened Yang Pinggu's 100 treasures pouch and looked through it. The accumulation of a 1,000-year sect was not small. However, he naturally did not care about ordinary talismans and pills. This is the elemental spirit pill. Li Qingshan took out a dark golden pill with restrained spiritual energy. It didn't even emit a hint of fragrance. It was heavy to the touch, looking more like a metal ball. The effects of the origin spirit pill were similar to the true spirit pill. They were both pills used to break through to the golden core realm. However, the difference in value was like heaven and earth. Moreover, it was truly priceless. So far, Li Qingshan had only obtained one from the Green Vine Elder's 100 treasures pouch. Now he had obtained another. In the future, he would have another guarantee when he condensed his golden core. He then raised the dragon-seizing pitchfork and split it into two. Spiritual lights flickered. The profound mark was faintly discernible. It was shaped like a two-headed snake. After the blood saber was broken, he lacked a suitable weapon. Although he hadn't used this trident before, it was still a good weapon. However, it was still a magical artifact and it was of the water element, so it was just right for him to use. Li Qingshan first repaired the small area of water destroyed by Yang Pingu. Yang Pingu had sacrificed the life of a foundation-building cultivator, which only wasted a quarter of an hour of Li Qingshan's time. He even lost a whole set of equipment. Then he refined the dragon-seizing pitchfork. The shape of the dragon-seizing pitchfork changed slightly. The two ends of the pitchfork curved slightly, resembling the horns of a bull. To a certain extent it was quite suitable. So this is how this thing is used. Li Qingshan casually slung the dragon-seizing pitchfork over his shoulder and returned to clear Quartzex waters. He continued with his work. He suddenly sensed a wave of demonic qi coming from the distance. It was the demonic qi he had lost in the river. He felt that this demonic aura was somewhat familiar. Come here. Li Qingshan pointed the dragon-seizing pitchfork in the direction of the demonic qi. As the head monk of the Bodhi courtyard, the Annihilum Lightchan master had undergone the second heavenly tribulation. He was also a genius, having spent several centuries practicing the Buddhist Dharma. Buddhist scriptures alone could not match up to his teachings. After the Annihilum Lightchan master left, Little and immediately gained confidence, so he refined the Blood Sea banner. Working together, the two of them had completely established their foundation in the Clear River Prefecture. Li Qingshan had become a water god of the lake. The surging water spiritual qi entered his body through the god seal before merging with the spirit turtle's demon core. Even without pills, his cultivation speed would be guaranteed to a certain extent. If he could refine the water of the Clear River, just what would the effects be? He was extremely eager. However, there were disadvantages too. From today onwards, the water god seal could no longer stray too far away from the region of water he controlled. The further it was, the weaker its control would be. If he went beyond 5,000 kilometers, it was possible for him to completely lose contact with it. By then, he would have to refine the Clear Court Lake again. And, even if it was only a short distance away, some of the power in the water god seal would leak away. Of course, he could leave the water god seal behind and hand it to another member of the water race, but that would be equivalent to giving up his position as a water god. Moon Court Lake only recognized the seal and not the person. If the member of the water race refused to return the water god seal, it would be a problem. No matter which member of the water race controlled the seal, their strength would increase drastically in the lake. Although he could hand it over to a weaker subordinate to ensure absolute suppression, it would be troublesome if an enemy were to invade. This was the problem of becoming a god. He was not free, which was why when Li Qingshan announced himself as the god of Moon Court Lake, many people had indeed stopped worrying. However, this problem was not a major problem to Li Qingshan. To be continued. Wasungzan stopped and turned around. He saw a huge red carp swimming toward them and pouncing toward them. Han Tie held a spear in his hand, ready to strike. However, he was held down by Wasungzan. With a splash, the big red carp leaped across the passageway and brushed past them. Han Tie put down his spear, and the two of them continued forward. Their field of vision suddenly widened. The passageway led to a large hall. There were no pillars, only an empty space. The shape was like a drop of water that had fallen on the ground. There was a tall throne in the middle. The moon devil sat on it. The big red carp swam up from the floor. It moved closer to him and opened its mouth wide. The moon devil smiled and patted the big fish's head. He fed it a pill. "You're really bold. Aren't you afraid that I won't be able to resist killing you?" Then he looked at the few oversized crab demons, turtle demons and prawn demons hiding under the water. He scolded, "You cowards. If you don't come up now, I'll cook you for soup." They swam over in a hurry and lined up on the two sides. They were all the prawn soldiers and crab generals that Li Qingshan had subdued with the dragon-seizing bid-ant. They were not powerful, but they could still hold their ground after all. Wasungzan had no idea how to react inside. Everyone in the Clear River Prefecture knew about the Moon Devil's brutality, but when he saw it in person, he would always feel a slight difference. However, as he approached the throne, he immediately sensed the powerful aura from him. It was heavy, violent, tranquil, and melded together. It was indescribable. The further he went, the stronger the pressure became. When he was still 10 meters away from the throne, he stopped. He actually felt like he could not get any closer. "What have you come for? Have you come to congratulate me? Or have you come to kill me?" Li Qingshan's eyes turned cold. He stared at his two old friends from the 100 schools of thought with a burning gaze. He did not want to appear too polite, just in case they saw through him and ruin the Moon Devil's reputation. Wasungzan only felt a surging malice crash towards him like a tsunami. Han Tie took a step forward and held his spear horizontally, blocking Wasungzan. "Piss off, all of you." "Oh, I'm not talking about you." Li Qingshan withdrew his aura and cursed as he pointed down. As it turned out, before Wasungzan and Han Tie had done anything, the turtle demon had already retreated into its shell, while the crab demons and prawn monsters had curled up into a ball out of fright. When they heard the order, they immediately felt like they had been pardoned, fleeing into the water in a hurry. "I want to ask fellow North Moon to return Senior Zhoutong's lightning slaughter wooden sword." Wasungzan knew that with his status, he did not have the qualifications to discuss war or peace with North Moon. His request for the lightning slaughter wooden sword was more of a test. Before the situation was settled, rashly coming into contact with the Moon Devil would definitely cause him to be criticized. However, if his goal was to return Zhoutong's lightning slaughter wooden sword, then things would be different. "Zhoutong? Who's that?" "It's the Taoist priest who used lightning to fight you last time." "Oh, you're talking about this." Li Qingshan came to a sudden realization. He took out the lightning slaughter wooden sword and tossed it lightly in his hand. Electricity surged and flowed. "But why should I return it to you? This is my spoil of war. The lightning slaughter wooden sword is useless to you, fellow Taoist. Can we use something else to exchange for it?" Li Qingshan leaned forward and raised his eyebrows. "Right now, aren't your lives and 100 treasures pouches mine? If fellow Taoist really wants it, then come and take it." Wasungzan spread his arms in a carefree manner. However, he was extremely nervous inside. According to his deductions, the North Moon had not even directly killed the demon slayer Yang Pingu, sparing him. The chances of him killing them were almost zero. However, Taoists were fickle. They could not be judged with common sense. No matter how clever a person was, it was impossible to avoid all accidents. Li Qingshan laughed aloud. With a wave of his hand, the water palace collapsed loudly. Water surged in from all directions. Just when Wasungzan and Han Tie thought he was going to attack, Li Qingshan leapt up gently and vanished into the waves. "I heard that there's a treasure in the 100 schools of thought called the water mirror disc. If you want the sword back, you'll have to use the water mirror disc to exchange for it." After seeing the water mirror disc for the first time, Li Qingshan was interested. There seemed to be a fortuitous encounter between him and the spirit turtle's ability, the water mirror's image. If he could obtain it, his comprehension of the water mirror's image might reach an even higher level. Li Qingshan passed the water god seal to his mirror clone before concealing all of his aura. He returned to the Chain Mountains silently with little Anne. In Mooncourt Lake, Li Qingshan controlled his clone to swim towards a small lake near Mooncourt Lake. The quality of the water god seal was indeed extraordinary. Even Mooncourt Lake was unable to fill it completely. There was still some space at the edges. However, it was impossible for it to hold another clear river. What Li Qingshan needed to do was continue refining the water in the surroundings until it filled up the water god seal. Arriving before the small lake, the water god seal shone brightly. Li Qingshan threw himself into it, but he did not use his own demon qi to refine it. Instead, he used the spiritual qi of the entire Mooncourt Lake. In less than 2 hours, his aura had filled the entire lake, adding another region of water and power to the water god seal. Li Qingshan smiled. Sure enough, it was just like how it was written in the books. After grasping a larger body of water, refining the smaller ones in the surroundings became extremely easy. Afterwards, Li Qingshan continued to work hard, refining most of the water in the surroundings. Finally, he filled up the water god seal. The tremendous water spiritual qi was boundless, like it was about to overflow. It left Li Qingshan's mind in turmoil. Suddenly, there was a flash of inspiration in his head. The mental cultivation method of the arts of the boundless ocean appeared in his head. Although Mooncourt Lake was still incomparable to a true ocean, it already had the atmosphere of an ocean. It was greatly beneficial to Li Qingshan's path of human cultivation. It was truly like the saying, a willow planted unintentionally becomes a shade. Chapter 511. What a great appetite! Ruexian glanced past Li Qingshan and said secretly, "It's just us. I really have to thank you, Miss Ruexian." Li Qingshan twisted his neck. He sat to Lu Chongqing's left in his handsome uniform of a Scarlet Hawk commander. To Lu Chongqing's right was Han Anjuan. Just this change in position demonstrated the difference in his current status. It made Lu Chuanfeng very envious as he sat in the corner. There were quite a few foundation establishment cultivators in the schools of thought of the Clear River Prefecture. Some possessed great seniority, while others possessed great cultivation. However, in formal meetings, the people who could sit at the very top would always be prefects, generals, and commanders. Even Zhou Tong, who was known as the greatest of the Clear River Prefecture, could only be ranked below them. This was a form of official status. Lu Chongqing's status went without saying. He was recognized as the greatest of the Clear River Prefecture by the country. Although Han Anjuan only led the school of the military, he could directly enlist the disciples of the academy in times of need. The Hawkwolf Guard was an organization of violence directly subordinate to the Great Xia Empire. They were divided into the traditional 3 types of authority: politics, military, and supervision. Although the schools of Buddhism and Taoism were filled with talents and had a solid foundation as religious figures, they could not get involved in specific matters. Li Qingshan even turned around and tried to persuade Lu Chongqing, "Don't fret, Sir Lu. The water mirror disc isn't something the Moon Devil can have just because he wants it." Hua Sengzan also felt like the Moon Devil was demanding an exorbitant price. The problem was, if it was something else, then so be it, but it just had to be the lightning slaughter wooden sword. "Kid, that's easy for you to say. That's my sword." Sure enough, Zhou Tong became rather restless. The lightning slaughter wooden sword was a crucial arcane artifact for him to undergo the second heavenly tribulation. It was something that directly connected to his life. He had the opportunity to take it back now. How could he not be tempted? "Don't be angry, Senior Zhou. We're just taking our time to think about it." Li Qingshan thought, "Hey, of course I know it's your sword. If it wasn't, I wouldn't have taken it." Yes, the water mirror disc is indeed precious, but the Thunder Slaughter wooden sword is also a rare magic treasure. In the future, it might become a magic treasure. It would be a pity to lose it. It was better for everyone to discuss it. What should we do? No matter how Li Qingshan talked, everyone felt that he didn't say anything. Zhou Tong even bluntly reprimanded, "Your words are like fart, completely useless." Li Qingshan really had nothing to say. If he objected to the exchange, he would be going against himself. If they supported the exchange, wouldn't it be easy for others to suspect them? The discussion gradually became more and more intense. Li Qingshan decided to multitask. On one hand, he was dealing with the conference of the 100 schools of thought, while on the other, His mind was still on the moon court lake that was shimmering with light. Raising his head, he saw a small river flowing down from a mountain peak. This river was even smaller than the first river that Li Qingshan had refined. If it were not for the fact that it was long and winding, it would have been much smaller than the first river Li Qingshan had refined. If not for the fact that it was long and winding, it would probably not be enough to condense a god seal deep into the forest. Li Qingshan stood above the mouth of the river, surging demonic qi flowing against the flow. With the support of the god seal, it connected the entire body of water in the blink of an eye. If there was still space in the water god seal, he could easily fuse it within, and then expand the body of water he controlled slightly. However, the god seal was already full, and could not accommodate even a single stream. Li Qingshan closed his eyes and sensed an extremely thin band of blue light, extending into the mountains and forests in a curving manner. He reached out and scooped it up. He pulled out that ribbon of light and wrapped it around the water god seal. As expected, this process was much more difficult than directly using the water god seal to take over the body of water. It was equivalent to condensing a god seal all over again. If not for Ru Xion's water god seal, even a small river like this would find it difficult to break through the suppression of the great cauldrons of the 9 provinces and condense a god seal. The water god seal spun like a spindle, the blue ribbon of light coiling around it like threads, round and round without end. As he continued to condense it, Li Qingshan gradually grasped the trick. The water god seal spun faster and faster, and he also felt like this process was not as difficult as it was described in the books. It's probably because I've already become a high-level water god, and this river is just too small. Li Qingshan spent a few more hours before finally refining the small river. The water god seal in his hand changed once more. Its size remained the same, but the patterns on it became slightly more complicated. Even if the power within it dispersed completely again in the future, the quality of the water god seal would increase slightly. This would not change. Is this because I practiced the spirit turtle's method of sea suppression? Li Qingshan was elated as he came up with another guess. Li Qingshan was correct. If it were a regular demon, or even a demon commander, they would not be able to condense a god seal from the small river without 3 to 5 days of effort. Condensing something from nothing had never been a simple matter. Unless it was a natural variant, possessing the bloodline of a divine beast. The spirit turtle happened to be the most renowned water divine beast. Its status was equivalent to that of a phoenix to fire. The crux of the 9 transformations of the demonic and divine lay in the word transformation. It could allow a regular human teenager to possess the innate talent and might that only the strongest demonic and divine beasts in the world possessed. The spirit turtle could even suppress the boundless ocean, let alone a mere mountain river. Divine beasts were born with the word divine in their names. They were born with divine power. As a result, when Li Qingshan refined Moon Court Lake, it was different from regular demons. It was a wondrous sight. Yeah, there's a result. The meeting of the 100 schools of thought fell into a stalemate. Lu Chongqing was reluctant to part with the water mirror disc, while Zhou Tong wanted to take back his lightning slaughter wooden sword, but it was difficult for him to bring it up. You should be careful when you interact with the Moon Devil. Don't end up getting hurt instead. Li Qingshan obviously understood the principle of progressing step by step. He had not actually spent a lot of time and effort on the arts of the boundless ocean. However, he also had to practice an extremely profound ability like the 9 transformations of the demonic and divine, and he had to maintain his status in the world of demons. He never had enough time. He had always wanted to learn the path of artifact forging, but he never had the time. He hoped the situation would ease up for a while after the war ended, so he would have more time to cultivate. This tiger is far too vicious. It's not something I can fight. I just want to tame it so that it can hurt fewer people. Li Qingshan smiled. That's not easy either. We've gained a powerful rival in love. A rival in love. Sungzan suddenly discovered he had missed something. What would the Marquis of Rui think about the Moon Devil's public confession of love to Gu Yenying? The exchange this time would probably lead to unexpected problems. And the development of the matter seemed to verify Sungzan's guess. The Marquis of Rui had never turned down Lu Chongqing's request, but he did not agree to it either. Lu Chongqing was afraid of handing over the water mirror disc so easily, so the matter was shelved just like that. Li Qingshan obviously was not in a hurry. The one who should be in a hurry was Zhou Tong. This had been a stroke of inspiration in the first place. It was an idle move. If it succeeded, then that would be for the best. If it failed, then there was nothing to be pitiful about. In reality, he had already forgotten about this matter. In Qing Zhao's dwelling in the Chain Mountains, Li Qingshan's eyes were firmly shut. The blue light on him rose and fell like waves, producing the faint sound of waves. Apart from diverting a part of his attention so that his clone could continue refining water and expanding the God Seal, he had already submerged his mind into his sea of consciousness. His mind had already completely sunk into his sea of consciousness. In the boundless sea of consciousness, it was like a huge mirror, clearly reflecting the two figures. One was Li Qingshan, while the other was Helicoverpa Rosa. From when they first met to every single time they met, every single word they spoke, he did not miss out on anything. Then it went to the sex in Cobweb City, the bitter battle below Cobweb City, the indulgence in venting after victory, and everything. Li Qingshan recalled her every expression and every movement like he was recalling a lover. From a certain perspective, enemies were indeed closer than lovers. Hating a person would make him think about them every single day, but loving someone was very difficult to achieve. Of course, Li Qingshan did not hate Helicoverpa Rosa. What he recalled was more excitement and passion. Her wounds and demon chi should have recovered long ago. Why hasn't she come for revenge yet? What secret weapon is she preparing? The tiger demon roared inside, desiring another battle with her. He could imagine that this battle would definitely be extremely difficult, but this was also where the interest lay. He was no longer the Li Qingshan of the past either. Controlling Mooncourt Lake held extraordinary significance to him. Apart from the direct benefits, it was more important for his mind. As a result, he devoted his mind to the figure of the spirit turtle that radiated with an extremely tranquil aura once again, comprehending and sensing it. On the other side of the dwelling, Little An clasped her hands together. Between them was the blood demon core she had obtained from killing Blood Shadow. The blood demon core was like a pool of blood, constantly changing its shape. It let out a strange hiss, like the wailing of 10,000 ghosts in hell. Little An freed up her left hand and swung it upwards. The 21 skull prayer beads dispersed, turning into a skull that circled above her head. She lifted up the blood demon core in her right hand with some difficulty. Its shape had already changed completely, becoming a thin piece that rippled like flowing water. She suddenly pushed upwards, and the blood demon core flew up. The skull opened its mouth and sprayed the samadhi flames of white bone at the blood demon core. She formally began refining the blood sea banner. At the same time in Mooncourt Lake, Li Qingshan did not stop refining the surrounding waters for a single moment. Under the control of a single will, his main body and clone advanced together, all for the sake of becoming stronger. Before he knew it, 4 months had passed. Li Qingshan spent half a month and refined another river that spanned 500 kilometers. He temporarily stopped advancing and gazed at the water god seal in his hand. It was still translucent, glowing with blue light. However, the patterns on it had become clearer and more complicated. It was no longer a flat piece, beginning to take on a three-dimensional feel. And he could clearly sense that the water spread out in all directions with Mooncourt Lake as the center. Mooncourt Lake was like a thumping heart, while the rivers were the arteries that transported blood. However, Helicoverpa Rosa still had not come to challenge him, which gave him a sense of danger. Or did demons have a different concept of time than humans? Li Qingshan dared not be careless, but he was not overly worried either. He believed that he would definitely grow stronger faster than Helicoverpa Rosa. If she was willing to delay, then that was fine. After delaying for 80 to 100 years, there would be no need for a battle to the death. She could just lie down and wait for him to arrive. After a short rest, Li Qingshan continued his search for a water vein connected to Mooncourt Lake that had yet to be refined. What he wanted to find the most was a water vein connected to the underground rivers, but he had yet to find it. There was nothing he could do about it. There were just too many rivers connected to Mooncourt Lake, and every single one of them twisted and turned. It was very difficult to determine their direction from one end. Some seemed to be underground rivers, but they would come to the surface after traveling underground for a period of time. Some clearly flowed in the direction of the territory, but they would be obstructed by the mountains. After a few turns they would end up somewhere unknown. Just where is it? In the Chain Mountains, Li Qingshan muttered to himself. He opened his eyes and glanced at little Anne. She was still focused on refining the Blood Sea banner. Within the samadhi flames of white bone that burned quietly, a long blood-red banner had already vaguely taken shape. Li Qingshan could already sense the great power it contained. It surged like the ocean, boundless and boundless. Gu Yining's status was the same as his, and there were basically no one who could say for sure how deep her cultivation was, not to mention the figure that enveloped the entire sky of the Great Xia Empire behind her. Compared to her, the mighty Marquis of Rui was merely a small local marquis. It's just a game of chess. Why do you have to be so serious? This is my ancestral property. The Marquis of Rui smiled bitterly and stared at her. What moved him the most was not her absolute beauty, nor was it her noble status. It was not even her bearing that was as graceful as the wind. Instead, it was a kind of boldness. Although the wind did not move, she was omnipresent, covering the 9 provinces. Everyone said the Clear River Prefecture was a game of chess, but apart from the few people at the very top, no one was bold enough to actually treat it as a game of chess. Why don't we just hand the water mirror disc to him? Let's see what he can do. Gu Yining really did seem like a spectator enjoying the show. He's my admirer after all. The corner of Gu Yining's lips curled. She did not mention anything about the changes in the situation. She did not hide her personal likes or dislikes at all. Since you said you're going to give it to him, then let's give it to him. Who made me end up like this, so I should share the same fate as this North Moon? The Marquis of Rui sighed. In the blink of an eye, he tossed the words, if this demon is not eliminated, he'll definitely become a great problem, to the back of his mind. He did not want to come off as too petty in front of her. Of course, that was not the main reason. Recently, he had been under quite a lot of pressure. In order to retrieve his lightning slaughter sword, Zhou Tong had truly been in a great hurry. He had found a figure that even the Marquis of Rui could not turn down to talk to him. Gu Yining did not mention the situation, but the Marquis of Rui had already analyzed the situation countless times inside, considering the benefits Zhou Tong would gain from undergoing the heavenly tribulation. Gu Yining's words could only be regarded as a prelude at most. With his cultivation and age, why would he do something stupid for the sake of his personal feelings? Of course, this prelude was very important. The Marquis of Rui instinctively felt vigilant or even fearful of the North Moon. It was far too unusual for a demon's cultivation to rise so quickly. He should be suppressed as much as possible. If it were not for what Gu Yining had said, he probably would have followed through with this idea. Afterwards, he regretted his decision today greatly, which also proved that something like boldness could not be faked after all. Some people really did not care about it. As the two of them spoke, Han Ongwa maintained the Han family's usual style, remaining silent and not stopping them at all. Only when they were about to leave did Gu Yining suddenly ask, "Has your niece succeeded with foundation establishment? She just underwent the heavenly tribulation the day before yesterday. She's currently resting and recovering." Han Ongwa's gaze was filled with inquiry. He had no idea why she had suddenly mentioned Han Qiongji. "Tell her to report to me tomorrow," Gu Yining said straightforwardly. Han Ongwa was rather confused. He had no idea why she cared so much about Han Qiongji. However, directly being promoted to a White Wolf Guard was not a bad thing at the end of the day. He did not want Han Qiongji to return to the Clear River Prefecture right now either. At the very least, he had to wait until the situation had settled down completely. As a result, he nodded. All right. The Marquis of Rui smiled. You must be talking about niece Qiongji. As her uncle, try persuading her again. Just how will she be willing to part with the heavenly maiden scatters the blossoms? Am I supposed to mistreat her? That'll be up to her. The great general's estate. No, I have to go back. Han Qiongji said firmly. I've already agreed to it. Military orders must be obeyed. As a Hawkwolf Guard, Commander Gu is your general. You should follow her orders. Alright, stop being stubborn. You're not a child anymore. For once, Han Ongwa showed a gentle expression, which filled the young men and women present with envy. Since when had their father ever been so kind to them? Moreover, ever since Han Qiongji had come, their lives had become much better, so they all tried to persuade her. Yeah, Sister Qiongji, just stay behind. He's already told you to wait for him. What's so good about that Li Qingshan? It's been so long, and there's no news from him at all. He hasn't even written a letter. Han Ongwa said frigidly. He personally killed 4 demon generals all alone. He's even the Scarlet Hawk commander of the Clear River Prefecture now. If you want to criticize others, look at yourself first. They immediately fell silent out of fear, but they felt extremely indignant inside. That's just because we didn't have the opportunity. Once that Li Qingshan comes, we'll definitely have a good fight with him. Han Qiongji was slightly surprised. She had been in secluded cultivation the entire time in order to break through to Foundation establishment, so she had no idea that Li Qingshan had already become a Scarlet Hawk commander. However, she always felt happy when her uncle praised him. Qingshan, hurry up and come. To be continued. Chapter 514. The river that stretched underground was not the one Li Qingshan had discovered. That was only one of the main streams. Instead, it was densely woven together like a spider's web. After experiencing the wonders of the spirit turtle suppresses the seas, Li Qingshan's ambition swelled. He was no longer satisfied with just refining a single river. Although the range completely exceeded his own territory, none of the other demon generals were bold enough to stop him. As a result, whenever he arrived at the mouth of a tributary, he would disperse his demon chi. Even with the spirit turtle's divine powers, the process was still extremely slow. However, he was in no hurry. He advanced forward slowly, all for the sake of establishing an underground network of water that belonged to him. At the top of Cobweb City, in the dark bedroom, a snow-white figure was vaguely visible behind the heavy curtains. Helicoverpa Rosa laid on the bed completely naked. She opened her vermilion lips slightly and spat out a thread of silk. At the same time, her 10 fingers danced about. Even her 8 legs danced about in a dazzling manner, constantly twisting and twisting the silk as if she was weaving something. Her expression was serious and focused. Although she was naked, there was not the slightest hint of it. Instead, she seemed extremely natural. At the same time, her cold, haughty, and cruel bearing had completely vanished. Right now, she seemed more like a craftsman, an artist carefully polishing her work. She had completely forgotten about her senior sister outside. None of the outside world's interference could affect her. However, Li Qingshan's large-scale refinement of water still alarmed her. Helicoverpa Rosa raised her head. She could clearly sense Li Qingshan's demon chi permeating her body. She bit her vermilion lips gently. A vicious light flashed through her eyes, but it only lasted for a moment. She lowered her head again and returned her focus to the work at hand. Actually, this was the spider's mode of killing. They would spend a long time preparing for the moment of surprise when their prey fell into their web. Croak croak. Great king, great king. The ice frog bounced around in Li Qingshan's hand. The ice spring it occupied was also the source of a system of water that Li Qingshan wanted to refine. Li Qingshan smiled and said, "It seems that you are about to take that step. Let me give you a hand." Ice Frog was among the demon soldiers under Li Qingshan. He was the strongest among them. Furthermore, he seemed to possess a special bloodline. which allowed him to unleash the power of ice. Few years ago, after a few years of bitter cultivation, he could be considered to have reached a certain critical point. However, if he wanted to truly break through, it would take years. However, when Li Qingshan took out the water god seal and tapped it gently, a ray of blue light entered the head of the ice frog. Immediately, the ice frog's body emitted a brilliant blue light. The demonic core in his body emitted an unparalleled chill that permeated his entire body. Plop! The ice frog turned around and jumped into the ice spring. Become a beauty to repay my kindness. Li Qingshan chuckled. He felt the ground tremble slightly, and the spring suddenly lit up. It spat out a bolt of lightning, which flickered continuously, getting brighter and brighter. After a long while, the trembling gradually subsided, and the lightning slowly dimmed. A handsome youth with icy blue hair crawled out of the spring. He said, "Croak, croak, thank you, great king." After careful inspection, Li Qingshan confirmed that this was indeed a youth and not a young girl. He said with a disappointed expression, "All right, I guess I'm unlucky. I'll give you a name. Let's call you Little Blue." Sigh, I hope Little Red is a female. Adhering to his usual tasteless naming principles, Li Qingshan casually named the ice frog Little Blue. His fate was still uncertain, so there was no time to feel guilty even if he wanted to. However, with Yi Liusu, he had truly fallen in love with her. There was nothing he could do to avoid it. What's wrong? Yi Liusu propped herself up and asked in confusion. Li Qingshan pulled her into his arms and shook his head with a smile. Nothing. I just remember something I promised you, but I didn't fulfill it. Fortunately, this was not his past life, or he really would have committed a heinous crime. In this day and age, even the icy-cold Han Anjuan had a great number of wives and concubines. As a result, the rumors between him and Ru Xian continued to circulate endlessly. Han Anjuan did not come knocking on his door and force him to move out of the Chain Mountains either. Compared to this, what troubled Li Qingshan even more was his identity as a demon. This was truly a major issue. If he did not handle it well, he would definitely hurt both himself and others. To be continued. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.